I want to ask you, Jay, for your half an hour back at the end of the meeting. Over here, and we're going to get started with the meeting. Can't hear you. Appreciate everybody coming tonight. Welcome. I can speak loud enough. Plus, hello. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome to the Ringwood Mine Superfund Site Community Advisory Group meeting. And this is the first community advisory group meeting we've had in over, I believe it's been over a year now. And we used to meet monthly to talk about the cleanup of the Ringwood Mines Superfund site. My name is Robert Spiegel. I'm the Executive Director of the Edison Wetlands Association and the CAG Facilitator. And we have a number of members of the CAG, and we'll just go around and everybody can introduce yourselves. People that are from the EPA would also introduce yourselves. And then we'll get started with the agenda. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Paul, former mayor, resident.
I'm speaking to the mic if I have to.
Robin Kennedy, resident, CAG member. You want to go first, yes?
John Spear, Mayor, CAG member.
Dave Ringwood.
Assemblyman Robert Orr, District 39.
Gary Cardinale, Senator, District 39.
Federal Bank Chief Vincent Mann, and also CAG member.
Vivian Milligan and my sister Iris Van Dunk, resident, ex-resident.
I'm Ken Petrone, New Jersey DEP.
Yes. Well, the EPA, might as well put-
My name's Kathy, I'm the EPA.
My name is Doug Arbori, I'm with EPA.
Al Battle, Nancy with EPA. Joe Gowers, EPA Project Manager.
And anybody else here from EPA or any agencies? Chief, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Chief Dwayne Ferry, Primary Chief of Rampo Lenape Nation. My people is dying here.
Okay, and the other members of the CAG are shadow members. Want to introduce yourself in the township?
I'm sorry, I'm Wanda G. Monahan, Environmental Council of the Borough.
Scott. Get it on order. And Board of Sports representatives?
Brian Boston,
I'm sorry, well, who are you from?
We can't hear him.
Corner store. Gary, we took over the corner store. Anybody else from the CAG?
You want to introduce Morgan Nicola, County Freeholders over there?
I'm sorry, freeholder?
Yes, State County Freeholder, Terry Duffy.
Bergen County freeholder, Moran.
Is there any other elected officials here as well?
I'm Christina Garfinkel, I'm representing Congressman Garrett.
Is there any
Zach McHugh from Senator Cory Booker's office.
Is there anybody else here that's from any representing any elected offices or agencies? I want to thank everybody from the public for coming, and I apologize for the fact that the room isn't big enough. Unfortunately, I was not involved in the planning and implementation, and we will try to have a bigger venue for the next CAG meeting that we have. And
Bob, we might just want to redo this meeting in a larger venue. You know, not this tonight, but I mean, we'll do this again, and we'll get one of the schools or even the NYU facility, which we've been offering. And then that way, people who don't get to make comments or ask their questions tonight, because we may run out of time, can certainly come to that. So I can send that suggestion if you want. I mean,
well, we can set up another CAG meeting subsequent for next month anyway, and because there's going to be additional issues and stuff that are going to come out of tonight's discussion, as well as we have technical comments that were prepared by Dr. DeFur that won't be done until tomorrow anyway. So we'll need to have time to distribute it to the CAG as well as the public, and then So we could have a subsequent CAG meeting next month at a larger venue and review some of the documents and some of the information again. But, you know, to say we'll do it the same meeting over again, I don't think that's really gonna happen. But we can discuss the issue in more detail, especially since we'll have Dr. DeFer's comments by
And I
then.
thought he was gonna be, couldn't make it tonight.
No, he could not make it.
So we start it and then say we'll pass it. Let's go at the end, carry on with, NYU. No, I'm saying start the meeting at the end.
All right, so let's get right into the US EPA update. Unless any members of the CAG have any additions to the agenda or anything they want to put on the agenda besides those modifications.
I already heard me now, but I said we should start this meeting. You know, I don't think we're gonna get all taken care of tonight, so at least just, you know, carry over for that.
We have action items too that were not on here that were carried over from the last meeting, that were things that were important, that were never discussed or reviewed, since we didn't have a meeting for a year.
Almost a year.
So let's let you do your, yeah. Can you do your update now?
Yeah, Bob, Joe and I are gonna stand so we can get to the projector, if that's okay with everybody? And we can also see the audience a little bit better, I think.
Are you gonna stand over there, one of you guys will go, one of the projector, the other one?
Yeah, so I'll just be covering the first slide, then Joe will do, probably most of the others. Okay, if I stand here, take that microphone. Check back to the audience.
And you have the map right
Well, my name is Doug Garbarini. I'm a branch chief with EPA in the Superfund program. EPA is very pleased to be here to be able to explain our 2015 monitoring data. We also have a little bit of new data that we just received today or yesterday actually, which are results from sampling done in January of 2016. So I know there have been some news reports in the papers over the last couple of weeks. I'm sure you're very eager to get into the details of the presence of 1,4-dioxane at the site. Joe Garrows will be getting into the details. Before we got into that, I thought I'd just try and clarify and emphasize a couple of things so that we have a pretty good understanding of the agency's perspective on the recent findings of 1,4-dioxane at the site. Now, we know that we've heard from people that they're concerned that perhaps the presence of 1,4-dioxane at the site presents an imminent threat to them. What we really want to make sure everybody walks away from this meeting with is an understanding that we do not think that is the case.
Walk in our shoes.
I know, I'm not walking in your shoes on that. But what we really need to have happen for the explosion to occur is for people to be drinking the water here. Now, we've got groundwater that's contaminated with 1,4-dioxane, but nobody is drinking that water. You all get your water from public supplies, and those public supplies are regularly tested, and they are providing a safe, reliable, potable supply of water to all of you. So that's
But
very
the
important.
waters have the water supply system that runs by wells, and wells are down into the ground.
Yes.
Is that true? So, is it possible for that, whatever you call it, dioxane, go into the,
No, there are different aquifers to begin with, and we've also asked the borough for their drinking water.
I know I work for the borough.
Oh, you work for the borough? Okay.
Yes, I did.
Well, you may know that they actually had monitored for 1,4-dioxane in 2013, and they did not find it above the state standard. They found the levels, yeah, very, no, 0.07 is actually the detection limit. It was found, I think, in one sample at close to 0.1 part per billion.
Yeah. With regards to the borough's data that was provided, the highest level, there were two samples which did come up with 1,4-dioxane. The highest one was at 0.1. And the state's interim specific groundwater quality standard, which is not like an MCL, it's not a legal standard at this point in time. That standard is 0.4. So it's.
And I don't want to drag this out once you guys get your information. Dioxane is not naturally occurring, right?
That is correct.
Right, so if you have that show up in a water source, no matter how minuscule it is, realizing that it's less than a mile from the supervised site, somebody should have questioned. I would be told.
Yeah, we'll sort of get into a little bit of the details about dioxane.
I don't want to
and-
stop you,
and-
man.
yeah.
That's got a lot.
Well, also, what's the dilution level to bring it up to that minimal expectation? How much of that has to be diluted in order to find this trace element?
I don't think those samples were actually diluted.
We
We
need
will-
to have, well, what would you get? It just occurs minimally?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the-
I'm saying is a dilution factor, or you just,
No.
no.
Well, it depends upon what you mean by dilution factor. Sometimes in a
You said it was
laboratory, you don't
minimal
dilute a
trace.
sample
In
down
order to
so you
have a
can
minimal
find
trace, you have to have a body up to develop a trace from. That means dilution.
So are you're basically talking, is there a source, a higher
Right.
concentration source that is
Or
basically?
would there have been in order to get to that point?
Yeah, I think if you, when Joe gets to some of his slides, you'll see how frequently this product, or that 1,4-dioxane occurs in the environment. It's in detergents at thousands of times higher than this. It's in baby baths and things like that, so we'll get into that. It's around quite a bit.
We really do want to, answer as many questions and hear as many statements as we can, but I think it might help if we do get to go through this presentation. That might answer some of your questions. Okay, so yeah, let's move on. Thanks.
So again, obviously, you're hearing a lot of this information second or third hand, not directly from EPA. We apologize for that. We regret not having made this information available to you sooner. In the past, we had been providing updates on new data from the site at regularly scheduled CAG meetings. We haven't had one of those in a while. So what we want to do moving forward is make sure that we have an effective means of getting that data out to people, so they have it sooner rather than later. Whether that be posting it on the website and sending out an email to folks, whatever means we can come up with, we'd like to talk about that with CAG and figure out what could be most effective. So again, that was just sort of the opening slide for us. Joe will get into a whole lot of additional detail about the 1,4-dioxane that we found, and also about some benzene data that we want to share with folks as well.
And I'm Joe Gowers, the EPA project manager for the site. And before I continue with the presentation regarding the dioxane, just want to point out there was a handout back there, an April 10th letter, which actually responds to some of the concerns from the last CAG meeting. So I just wanted to let you know that was put out there.
Okay?
Yes, it's out there tonight. I don't know, about 50 copies back there, so. Now, I just wanted to begin by going over, there's been a number of groundwater sampling events conducted in 2015 at the site. I wanted to sort of lay out that chronology, so as I'm discussing the data, we understand the sampling events that were conducted. Back in March of 2015, we actually started off by conducting a limited groundwater sampling event in the Peters Mine Pit area of the site. And those samples were actually analyzed for what we call volatile organic contaminants. That's like your benzene and other solvents of that nature. In April 2015, we did another groundwater and surface water sampling event again in the Peters Mine Pit area of the site, and again analyzing for VOCs. During that sampling event, the borough actually split samples with Ford Consultant for independent analysis.
Was it just groundwater or was it surface water?
It was groundwater and some surface water samples also.
The same sampling points that EPA has had in the past?
It's been, yes, the same sampling points, primarily up near the Peters Mine Pit area of the site.
So there was no new wells installed that were sampled at that time?
Not at that point in time. At that point in time, we're still sampling, and as we get into the data, we'll explain why we had these additional sampling rounds conducted. And then in June, again, there was another groundwater sampling and surface water sampling event in the Peters Mine Pit area of the site, and again, samples analyzed for VOCs. In August, we did our annual comprehensive groundwater sampling event and surface water sampling event, where essentially all the points at the site that had been generally historically sampled were again sampled, this time for the VOCs, for semi-VOC, semi-volatile organic contaminants, metals, and polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs.
So you only do one round a year for the priority programs?
Right now, we are doing one comprehensive round a year, and once we begin the remedial action for the operable unit 2, that's the capping of the Peters Mine Pit area, O'Connor disposal area, and the Cannon Pit area, and that's when we go into a quarterly sampling round 4 times a year, essentially.
I thought that you were gonna do that in response to the New Jersey Geologic Service, that EPA was gonna do additional groundwater data points and additional sampling to address that scathing letter that the New Jersey Geologic Service sent back in response to the well points going to the Park Mine Brook.
Well, there was an investigation, and we did provide to you the January 2015 groundwater remedial investigation report. And that report does summarize some of those additional investigations that were conducted to address some of the recommendations of the New Jersey Geologic Survey and the U.S. Geologic Survey.
Yeah, but they never did, but they only still going back to one sample a year for everything. They didn't come there and sample all the contaminants. They still, even though they, said they're gonna put more wells in, they only did volatiles.
I'm sorry, I really don't want to interrupt, but
Well, I just want to clarify because I want to, because people don't understand the difference between the volatile sampling and why it's important to look at all the pollutants and not just.
So maybe if they have more information, then we get.
Well, I
to the
wanted to
questions
clarify,
that-
I wanted to clarify
I know
what.
you have lots of questions and you get
If you
more.
don't provide clarity, you get lost in the minutia. So we're just waiting, we'd like to have more.
I have a point of clarification, please. Judy Zelikoff, NYU School of Medicine, toxicologist. What VOCs did you look at, and who was the independent contractor for your analysis?
The independent analysis in April, you're talking about the April sampling?
Yes.
That was actually the Borough of Ringwood's consultant and their laboratory that analyzed the independent samples at that point. So you had Ford's consultant analyzing, and the Borough of Ringwood also split
It's a little bit
samples.
of a conflict of interest there.
For sure it is.
On
both sides.
Who did the borough hire as an environmental consultant to do these measurements, and how were they done?
Well, Excel is their consultant, that has been their consultant, and the laboratories that were used it was Accutest and Test America.
So you call that...
Two different laboratories.
Okay, but there's conflict of interest with both of them. So a real independent laboratory would have been a laboratory which doesn't have a horse in the race.
Okay, well, that's what occurred in the August 2015 sampling round, where EPA essentially collected samples also. And we
What were
ran
the
our own
VOCs
laboratory.
that were evaluated, please?
Target compound list VOCs, basically, so the whole
All the
list.
congeners of the PCBs, all of the PAHs?
Everything, yes, that's on our standard target compound list, that's correct.
Let me just make one point of clarification. I requested that the EPA take the split samples. The EPA couldn't react that quickly. So the Borough of Ringwood hired a consultant to do it because we could react that quickly. So I don't want you to think for 1 minute that there was any conflict. We had a professional organization take it, we had certified lab people take it, it went to a certified lab, we got certified results. So I don't appreciate the insinuation. We asked them to do it, they couldn't, so we did it.
Is the data available?
Sure.
Okay, and how would I go about getting that data?
Request EPA, request it from us, whatever you want to
Yeah,
do.
I mean, that data, and, is certainly available.
Thank you.
Again, now we're back into the August 2015, that was the comprehensive sampling round. We sampled for the full target compound list, volatiles, semi-volatiles. And the EPA, excuse me?
Did you also do a library search with that sample?
That's standard.
So you did that, so you
Yeah.
everything.
Exactly.
You talk about that when you talk about the results of the sample. If you found any ticks.
Yes, so that does actually come up when we discuss the results of the sampling, we do discuss a tick in particular that was found.
And we identified.
And then we identify compounds, which we'll get into later. And then we also did another sampling round, groundwater, surface water sampling round that was conducted in the Peters Mine pit area of the site. Again, analyzed for VOCs, and that was in December of 2015. Now, we know we're here to discuss 1,4-dioxane, which has been reportedly found at the site. We wanted to begin, first of all, by stressing that 1,4-dioxane is not dioxane. Dioxane is in a different family of compounds. It's not the same. Also, some of the uses of 1,4-dioxane, it generally was used as a stabilizer for chlorinated solvents like 1,1,1-trichloroethane, and may be found at sites with elevated levels of chlorinated solvents. This site, we found some very low levels, but really not high levels of chlorinated solvents generally here.
In the water or in the sludge?
We're talking about basically in the water here. We haven't found really high levels of chlorinated solvents. Benzene, non-chlorinated solvents. It's used in many products, including paint strippers, dyes, greases, varnishes, waxes, and is also found in, or was found in a number of consumer products such as deodorants, shampoos, cosmetics. We've even seen levels as, reported as high as almost 5,000 parts per billion found in Dawn dish detergent. A federal maximum contaminant level has not been established for 1,4-dioxane at this point in time in drinking water. However, EPA has established a lifetime health advisory for 1,4-dioxane in drinking water of 200 micrograms per liter.
Don't you also have one?
That's parts per billion. It's essentially 200 parts per billion.
Don't you have another one of 0.68?
That is not a health advisory. That is a screening level. That's basically, you're at the site, it's just a general level that says, well, is this something we need to look at or not look at?
What is lifetime health advisory mean?
The lifetime health advisory was developed. It basically means it's the level at which, if you had levels below or below that level, you essentially would not expect to have any sort of non-cancer health effect, or a cancer risk of greater than 1 in 10,000, an excess cancer risk greater than 1 in 10,000. And in November of 2015, the state of New Jersey actually revised its interim groundwater quality standard from 10 micrograms per liter down to 0.4 micrograms per liter.
Do you know the reason why?
Excuse me?
Do you know the reason why?
Why the state revised their level? I can't tell you why the state did. I mean, it's probably based upon cancer risk, right? Yeah.
Ken, do you know what?
The assumptions used in calculating the number changed. EPA's risk assessment criteria changed, so that changed the number in that manner.
Now, in the as far as 1,4-dioxane groundwater results, in the April sampling round, the 1,4-dioxane was not specifically analyzed for in samples that were analyzed for by the forest consultant, but was analyzed for in the samples that was split by the Burroughs consultant. The samples that were split by the Burroughs consultant only detected 1,4-dioxane for the first time at the site, and a sample collected deep in the mine, essentially. It was not detected in any of the monitoring wells at the site.
And that was in 2000?
That was in the Peters mine. Basically, that was in April 2015. Again, the Burroughs split samples identified 1,4-dioxane deep in the mine water in the Peters mine at a level of 25 micrograms per liter, and it was undetected in all of the other monitoring wells at the site.
And yet, we didn't, at that point, once that was seen, nobody did any other testing for it at that point?
Well, as you'll see, we get into that. And further, we do get into testing of the later sampling.
And that's the same Peter's Mine pit that has the benzene levels in it.
It's the air shaft, it's not the Peters Mine pit. It's the deep air shaft in that area.
So is it the same area that you found the just or? So it is the same area where they found the
It's in the Peters Mine pit area. It's not in the Peters Mine pit, it's in the air shaft, which
Joe,
is open deep in the mines.
consistently found benzene in the air shaft as well. I think that
Yes, if that's what you're getting, yes. We have consistently found elevated levels of benzene at the deepest depth in the air shaft.
Sorry, Nick, in bullet one, you say found in air shaft a concentration of 25 micrograms per liter. In June 2015, it says air shaft at an estimated concentration level. What's the difference?
The difference is basically, based upon the analytical method, there's a detection limit. If it's found below this required laboratory detection limit, the data, the actual concentration becomes questionable, and it has to be listed as an estimated concentration.
This is higher than the one that we've seen.
And that's something we got to get into also. The difference was apparently different analytical methods were used.
Is that the only place you're gonna check where your vents are up there? Because I have them in my backyard, and I've never been there to check.
Okay, yeah, no, these aren't air samples. This is an air shaft that's now basically a deep pit filled with water, essentially. It's a deep 15 by 15 shaft that leads into the deep mining structure, and that's filled with water. And I mean, we have sampled there, but we have also sampled, as you'll see, all the monitoring wells at the site. Why did we?
Why'd you put them back there, are you?
Well, that's a different. Yeah, that's a different issue. That's for basically venting the borough landfill, the old borough landfill where garbage was dumped. Yes.
Everybody that lives on that side. Every one of them. Some of them too.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, then that's another issue, and I know the state has already sampled that air in the past and has not found that there being an issue.
There ain't nobody ever checked it. Nobody ever checked it. No one can.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we can get you that data. I know the state did sample that back in 2009.
Well, I'm sure they would come and ask for permission to go on people's properties, and nobody did that. Somebody's died in every house. Everyone.
Again, no, I mean, we're kind of getting into different issues here. That's basically the air samples.
All right, but that's something.
But again, as I'm telling you, it was those vents were sampled. They were sampled back in 2009, I believe it was.
No.
You know, if you want to give us your name, we could make sure that we send you the data to make.
Yeah, I'd like that, but I also would like for you to come up there and check again. Exactly. Because I watched the town dig up garbage there. I watched that, and they recovered it back up. I have photos of that.
The state did test it the last time, and they basically found nothing of concern.
Well, I think they should, where they checked them? Where?
The vents, they took air samples right out of those vents the last time.
Where?
And if you saw digging in the landfill, that's part, I mean, I know that, we did as part of our investigation, did some test pits in those landfills too to make sure it wasn't Ford waste there.
Back there is Archie Rockley checking on their poles. Nobody else has been there.
Okay, well, I'm telling you that they actually did back in 2009 combined split samples. Well, they will get to the
I still think they
proof.
should do it again.
Sherry, what we'll do is we'll put that down on our list for when we have our next CAG meeting.
Okay.
And that way we can make sure that they address that.
All right, thank you.
You know, and also that was one of the action items because the municipal landfill was listed as an operable unit on the first time this site was listed on the Superfund list. And according to the EPA's regulations, once something is on the Superfund list,
even when they delisted this site, that landfill should have been looked at every 5 years as an operable unit, and to see if whatever remedy that was selected was still protected. This was an operable unit of the first listing.
It was actually part of the first operable unit.
Which I thought it was its own separate standalone.
No, it was never its own separate standalone. The municipal landfill back behind the homes near Milligan Drive, no, that was always part of that whole first operable unit. Nothing was ever separately as part of that first investigation.
Van Duck Lane.
Joe, Pat, Bob, somebody, could we try and stick to the agenda?
Well, we did try to say that a couple times.
Folks, we really appreciate community involvement. I wish you'd been here for all the other meetings we had so that we wouldn't be getting here.
Excuse me,
Some
but
people are,
I
I
think
know.
he's confusing people, that's the problem. That is the problem,
Write down
she didn't
questions
understand.
the same way we
And
do.
I don't appreciate him smirking at the audience, I want to appeal to my
Excuse me.
elected officials
I'm
here.
sorry.
And for him to say, and mock the toxicologist who's a volunteer. This is supposed to be to give them information. She clearly didn't understand. I'm
Excuse me.
appealing to the elected officials to
Excuse
stop
me.
this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's hot in here and it's gonna get hotter. Some of you have been here with us, some of you who haven't seen it before, but we do have a process. So we hear from them, the CAG asks questions. If there aren't things that you hear from us, then we go to public portion. But if you each kind of pipe in, we're never gonna hear what we need to hear.
Is that the same as people dying from dioxin?
Chief, believe me, I know you've been here
I'm just
through
wanna
all
be
of you
curious.
too.
You're-
But Chief,
Tell me
Come
what
up
to
and
say.
live by
you
us
know
for a
this is the
while.
biggest crowd we've ever had. And you know that we're never gonna get through it if we don't do it like civilized people. So that's why we have to. Oh my
Where's my phone
Excuse me. Hello.
You're far from civilized.
That's an
Can we let Joe continue? We will have a public comment portion.
Alright, Joe, continue civilized.
Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you.
Keep making fun of us, Joe.
Okay, so going through the 1,4-dioxane groundwater sampling results that have been generated for the site. Going into June 2015 sampling event, 1,4-dioxane was again detected in the mined water during that sampling event, only in the mined water, at an estimated concentration of 150 micrograms per liter. It was tentatively identified that time around. The August 2015 sampling event was actually the first sampling event that we actually saw 1,4-dioxane detected in site monitoring wells, and it was detected at concentrations up to 38 micrograms per liter, and in the mine water in the Peters Mine shaft at concentration of 140 micrograms per liter. That was the data that became available to us. The report came to us in late November.
What is EPA's theory as to why you found these levels of dioxin now, as opposed to in the past?
Sure.
Did conditions change out here?
We don't believe that's the issue. We believe the issue was that, and again, we don't have the data to prove that, but we believe the 1,4-dioxane was probably always present at lower levels here, and we believe it's an issue of changing analytical methods here and the detection limits associated with those changing analytical methods. We've actually gone through a change of we've gone through 3 different analytical methods, from EPA method 8260B to 8260C to 8260C SIM, and then finally, with the December sampling round, we went to EPA method 8270 SIM, which is a semi-volatile method, which is what EPA is currently recommending to be utilized for detection of 1,4-dioxane. One of the problems with 1,4-dioxane is that we've had problems with essentially detecting it with some of these methods in the past. It's one of these compounds that doesn't like to come out of the solution.
Does the DEP concur with your theory? And it's based on one round, it's basically this one.
Well, we actually have a second round in December 2015. We actually did another round up in the Peters Mine Pit area. And again, 1,4-dioxane was detected during that sampling round. And during that sampling round, the monitoring well concentrations were, the highest concentration was 17.9 micrograms per liter. And in the Peters Mine pit air shaft, the highest level was 31.1 micrograms per liter. Again, keep in mind, EPA's health advisory level is 200 parts per million, 200 parts per billion, or 200 micrograms per liter over a lifetime, which is our most, it basically means you have to be exposed to it safe if you're exposed to it at that level over an entire lifetime. Drinking 2 liters
How much did you have per day over a lifetime?
Basically, that assumes you're drinking 2 liters of water a day.
How many years?
Over a lifetime.
What's a lifetime?
70 years.
Was it 7 years?
No, no, we're talking decades, not 7 years yet.
Is this considered a carcinogen?
It is. It's considered a probable human carcinogen by EPA. And again,
There's no safe level of carcinogen.
basically the way EPA's safe level, or basically our acceptable risk range is 1 in 10,000 to 1 in a million. And that's what we use for our sites.
So if it doesn't kill more than 1 in 10,000, it's okay, as long as it's,
Again, 1 in 10,000 to 1 in a million is our acceptable risk level.
how does that calculate out though with all the other contaminants of air and exposures?
At the end of the day, any sort of decision regarding, addressing this contamination, any way of, cleaning it up or anything like that, that decision hasn't been made at this point in time. We're still investigating the groundwater situation in this area, and there will be at some point in the future a record of decision generated, which will select the appropriate groundwater remedy. What's that? Again, that will be, no, it's pretty much the same, but it's just that these sites do take a very long time to address.
Keep in mind that the Peters Mine, they want to cap it, so the groundwater, they're bifurcating it as far as it's but the areas are connected, so that you're going to do a remedy here for Peters Mine, but you're going to decide about what to do with the groundwater later, so that kind of doesn't make sense. You think because you might need to rethink the remedy for Peters Mine if it doesn't address this contaminant, correct?
Well, I mean, at this point in time, again, we're handling this as a separate component, a separate operable unit, the groundwater situation here. And, we'll evaluate the data and, whatever decision that needs to be made to be protective of human health, we will make.
Right, but if you already move forward with the cap already, and you're gonna cap the site, cap the stuff in place, then you're pretty much deciding that that's the remedy for the groundwater, because after you cap it, you can't go back and dig it up.
Yeah, but Bob, I mean, at this point, again, as I indicated, we'll look at the data and then we'll make the appropriate decision. Keep in mind, the highest levels we're seeing are not in the pit. They're not in the Peters Mine pit, which is being captured. We're finding them in the air shaft at depth.
But they're in the surface water too.
And it appears the highest levels are in the Peters Mine pit air shaft. And as we get into the data, we'll see that the levels, next highest levels are in the wet monitoring wells right next to the air shaft. And we can see that sort of gradient there, so it looks like it's something probably in the mine.
Excuse me, there's a lot of people here who aren't able to get the paperwork and can hardly hear what's going on. Is a lot of this, or all of it, going to be available online?
Yes, so we will make this available online.
And where would we find that, under the town's website, or?
No, that would be on EPA's website. We'll put it up on our website.
Okay, thank you.
We can give you that link at the end. Make sure everybody has.
I don't know if I can bear staying to the end. But the link will be on the town's website?
Yes.
No, the link you're talking about.
What's the, we have the website that all that stuff is on. Why don't we
Well, that's a whole other story. We appreciate, our application. But I have another link that will go directly to those documents. So that's what, I'll talking about too. I mean, you can still go the old fashioned way to our webpage and, go to additional documents and find it that way, but I have one that goes directly to the documents also.
Yo, whatever you have, put on our website, we'll send you.
Okay, great. Now, we also, as we indicated, we also collected surface water sampling, done surface water sampling in the brooks that run through the site. And during the August sampling event, what we found was surface water samples collected, from the site. On the on-site area, we had levels. The highest level was 2.3 micrograms per liter of 1,4-dioxane that was detected. And at the furthest off-site sampling location, we had levels of 0.44, which was the highest we detected off-site in the streams, 0.44 micrograms per liter.
How far is that from?
That was actually collected in a sample which was at the mouth of Sally's Pond. That's 0.44 micrograms per liter. Now, during the December sampling event, we did some additional surface water sampling, and the surface water sampling was collected from the groundwater seeps and Park Brook. And during that sampling event, the 1,4-dioxane was detected at levels up to 3.56 micrograms per liter in the seep samples. That's right at the site where the groundwater drips out. And the SR3 area, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And within the stream itself there in the Park Brook, the highest levels we had were up to 0.82 micrograms per liter. As far as conclusions regarding our data, the first is, the 1,4-dioxane has not been detected in any of the groundwater or surface water samples at the site at levels which are in excess of EPA's lifetime health advisory of 2 micrograms per liter, and that's with all the sampling rounds. Not one sample was detected above that level.
Can I ask a question there?
Sure.
So based upon what you're saying right now, that New Jersey DEP adjusted their level to 0.4 UGL based upon US EPA's 200 UGL for lifetime.
They adjusted it based upon, the main difference between those two numbers is that their number is based upon a 1 in a million excess lifetime cancer risk, and ours is based upon a 1 in 10,000 excess lifetime cancer risk. Basically ours is, and that our acceptable risk range is 1 in 10,000 to 1 in a million.
So they're
So
taking into account that
when we make a decision at a Superfund site, if we have contaminants which present greater than 1 in 10,000 risk, that's when we determine that we probably need to take an action, essentially a cleanup action at the site. So it's consistent with what we do with the Superfund site. Now, as far as the Wanaque Reservoir, the data that we have from the Wanaque Reservoir, collected back in 2013 for 1,4-dioxane, indicated that it was not detected. It was not detected. It might have been misreported as being detected at low levels, but in actuality, the detection limit was 0.07 micrograms per liter, and it was non-detect at that level.
Hey, Joe, what part of Washington Reservoir was it sampled from?
It's basically, my understanding was that it was collected from their water treatment plant. So basically, as it was drawn from the reservoir, that's what they've told us.
That's about 4 miles.
I can't hear you.
I said, how far off site is that from here? Like 2 miles, 10 miles?
Again, it's in the Wanaque Reservoir, which is what, 1 mile to 2 miles at the beginning of that reservoir. But where they grabbed the sample, again, we've been told it came from their treatment plant, basically.
Okay,
So basically, what water they're distributing, basically from.
miles away, not the mile and a half where it starts right here, they will offsite.
Again, that's supposed to be the water that they're distributing, and based upon the 2013 sampling, it was non-detect.
We have the opportunity for EPA to address what she's saying and actually have taken samples at the reservoir mouth to see if there was any.
Well, again, we have sampling points along all of those streams, and we sampled at the mouth of Sally's Pond was our furthest downstream for those two brooks. We've also sampled for Mine Brook downgrading where it was essentially non-detect. So basically what we're trying to tell you at this point from our sampling, the highest level we saw off-site was basically 0.44 micrograms per liter, okay?
Right, but that's going to change depending on when you sample, the sampling times of the year, how much the high the water table is. You know,
Well, it's going to be, again, we haven't stopped, we're still conducting our investigations. We're going to do additional sampling. As we've done in the past, over many years here, we're going to continue to do groundwater and surface water sampling.
But you're only doing the whole priority pollutant list once a year.
Well, I mean, we are doing, well, again, once we get into the way that the OU2 record decision, the 2014 record decision was written, once we start implementing that remedy, the monitoring goes up to quarterly for groundwater.
Don't you think it should go up to quarterly now with the discovery of this?
Well, I mean, we're going to be doing additional sampling anyway. I mean, we have as we go through our slides, you'll see we have new monitoring wells that are going in. There'll be another sampling event conducted after those monitoring wells go in, as well as the annual sampling. So there's going to be more rounds of sampling here.
Can I ask one more question? Sally's Pond included in
Sally's Pond is one of our monitoring locations. Basically,
right, but is it
we're
inside?
no. That's why we indicate that it's in the off-site area. It's basically outside the box that essentially was drawn for the Superfund site. And the level we're seeing is 0.44 micrograms per liter. That's the highest level we saw at this point.
And so does that mean that because it's not inside the Superfund site and they don't have jurisdiction, you guys do, are you going to issue a health advisory for Sally's Pond?
We have jurisdiction over what?
The water, you guys are the DEP, right? So
Right. So there's
0.44 is above
no
0.4.
surface water quality standard for that. The 0.4 is a groundwater quality influence specific standard. It's not a surface. So what is the surface tap? There's none created yet.
So the people
it's
keep
not-
fishing, needing to fish out of that pond.
This is a very new contaminant.
I mean, it's an emerging contaminant. I mean, the sampling, one of the reasons that the sampling was conducted in 2013 is because EPA under the Safe Drinking Water Act requires the monitoring every 5 years of a new group of emerging compounds to evaluate whether or not we need to essentially develop a maximum contaminant level. So that's why this was required in 2013 so EPA can evaluate that.
Besides that contaminant, was there any other contaminants, whether they were above a standard or not, found in the surface water or the groundwater wells that were done during these rounds? Any lead or anything else that was found?
Well, I mean, as we've seen historically here, yes, we do have benzene in some of the monitoring wells within the Peters Mine Pit area. We sporadically get some, lead, but most of the sampling rounds, again, were conducted for volatile organics here. So you
found lead in the groundwater and the surface water as well?
Basically, sometimes we find it in the groundwater, sporadically in the Peters Mine Pit area, and as we've discussed in the past.
But during this round, you did find it as well?
Well, it depends on which round you're talking about. During December, we only sample for volatile organics.
The one time they sampled for the full priority pollutant list, did you find lead in addition, and benzene in addition to this?
We definitely found benzene. I'll have to take a look at the lead. Sometimes we find it, sometimes we find it above standards. I'm sure we detected it, whether it's above a groundwater quality standard or not. But we have to go back and take a look at which wells that was.
I was just curious if it was found along
during your sampling, if when you found this, there was additional lead or?
I mean, any benzene at the site, I mean, basically, in the Peters Mine Pit area, we do find benzene in some of the groundwater monitoring wells. We find it in the seep, and then we generally don't find it at any elevated levels in the surface water samples.
Hey, Joe, you mentioned lead in the testing. Is it true that it was found in the springs near the Sally's Farm as well?
It was found where?
In the Ringwood book that leads to Sally's Farm, the lead became used. Is it in that book as well?
In the past, there have been times when there has been lead found in some of the samples, and we had reported out on this during previous sampling rounds, in some of the samples that were collected by, say, the North Jersey District Water Supply Commission, and then subsequent sampling rounds, it's not detected at elevated levels. I believe we said back in like 2009, I believe it was found, and then in subsequent rounds, it hasn't been found. I mean, we've requested additional data from the New Jersey District Water Supply Commission, as we do periodically, just to see what their sampling has indicated. EPA is going, again, EPA has just sampled during the annual sampling round in August of 2015, the stream, so, and it was sampled for lead also. Now,
Next page.
yeah. Again, it wasn't detected in the Wanaque Reservoir back in 2013. Again, we're going to continue to monitor for 1,4-dioxane at the site in groundwater and surface water samples. And again, we want to point out again, 1,4-dioxane is not dioxin. It often gets confused, with dioxin.
It really doesn't matter that it's not dioxin. Dioxane, you're standing here and you're saying about 1 in a million, and I've spoken to EPA ad nauseum my whole career. So, you're standing here and you're trying to make people who are living with this every day to understand, because you're throwing out some numbers of what the standards are, what the maximum contaminant level are. But that's not really, I can see where the schism between communities and you guys, EPA, are. I mean, they're not only are they not quite understanding what you're getting at, because all you're doing is throwing out numbers which really don't mean anything.
Well, they really do mean something.
No, they really don't. Especially when they're not standards, okay? Especially when they're not standards and they've not been, they've not gone through the peer review whole thing. You're talking about 1,4-dioxane, which has been classified by IARC as a probable human carcinogen.
That's correct.
Okay? And so, these people are very concerned. Not only are you not talking about that, and EPA doesn't talk about that, you're not talking about the effects of these VOCs together. You're not talking about dioxane in collaboration with some of the metals. We do this research. We know how things are not only synergized, not only additive, but can also be antagonistic when you put the two chemicals together. If you really want to reach the people that you're trying to deal with, you have to talk to them, not in a 0.6543 standard that's not even approved by peer review yet. You have to talk to them about what's really going on. The fact that we're finding dioxane out is incredibly fearful. It's known to cause kidney injury, and all the people I work with and talk to, they have lots of kidney disease. ATSDR is not involved in this, and every time we talk to EPA, or I talk to EPA and say, what are you going to do about the community and the health? And they say, this is not our purview, this is ATSDR. Well, I've been to a lot of these CAG meetings, and I've never seen an ATSDR person here. And when you try to call them, as I did, you don't get any answers.
Okay, and what I can tell you is, ATSDR has been here historically. They have been here. They have done health consultations.
Not in the last 5 years.
The DOH has been here also.
Request that they attend this CAG meeting, and, and they, in the past have come out to CAG meetings when they have been requested to, or if there's a public concern. So we could request that the State Health Department and ATSDR come out to the next CAG.
Let me help you here. This is essentially what, the 8th year of this research?
How many times are you going to wave in your closure?
Well, I mean, with regards to the groundwater, I mean,
I'm saying in general, since you started.
Not that nice.
Well, what I'd like to say is that you know what I'm gonna ask, because I ask at every meeting. In light of this wonderful collaboration of sort of North science, that means very little to anybody except scientists. What is going on in terms of health and safety to provide a life for the community? People are literally dying mortally. I think we've had 150 deaths since we've been looking for 2.5 million per million. It's just Norton gobbledygook. People are dying. So let me ask our elected officials, what is doing to bring sucre to the community? Or do we just die while we go to another 8 years of, I told you before, I'd hire you if I had a company. You got the same look, the same foolishness for 8 years.
Exactly.
So what's happening? What are you guys doing or anything? Or can you make a recommendation to where the community can go to get some help and find a future? We're just dying off while you guys are playing with numbers.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, we are taking action. You know, we've issued a record of decision. We have a remedy. We have a remedy that's currently being designed. We have a design report that's going to be out later this month. We are working towards actually addressing the Peters Mine Pit, the Canna Mine Pit, and the O'Connor disposal areas.
What about the human beings that are being affected directly right now?
And right now, we have fencing around all those areas. So again,
What does that do for semi-volatile?
When you mentioned all
The volatile and semi-volatile
the
fences.
Johnson and Johnson case,
Yes.
would this
Hey, guys.
come about?
So
We don't eat or drink those things, you know? We drink water.
Guys, can we allow Joe to finish so we can get to the public comment? And then when we get to the public comment, you guys will definitely have a chance to voice your opinions, definitely.
okay. Okay, another contaminant that's been found at the site, which has historically been found here, is benzene. We wanted to report out on some of the benzene data that we've collected at the site. As we know, benzene has been frequently detected in groundwater samples from the Peters Mine Pit area at levels in excess of the federal standard of 1 micrograms per liter. As you're aware of, that during the September 2014 groundwater sampling event, we had some anomalously high levels in the monitoring well that screened directly in the Peters Mine Pit, and in one of the monitoring wells immediately downgrading the pit. That's actually in the RI report that you have a copy of, and that was given to you. That is 88.1 in RW6A and 56 in SC01, which is the one which is in the pit. That is correct. Well, this is what we're going to get to here. I mean, basically, because of that anomalous level, that we conducted an additional round in October 2014 to evaluate and confirm those levels. And during that sampling round, the levels were back down to historic levels. We required another sampling round to monitor the situation in March of 2015. And during that sampling round, we again found a high level of benzene in the well in the pit, and one of the wells immediately downgraded the pit, which is RW6. 344 in RW6, and then SC01 had 150. And of course, we were concerned about that too, which prompted us to require additional rounds of sampling. And then there were additional rounds of sampling conducted in April, June, August, and December, as we indicated. And during all of those sampling rounds, the levels were back down to historic levels.
So, did you graph out times where you...
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Yeah. Now this is a graph of the data for benzene at the well SC01 historically, going all the way back to 2006. You can see all the dots, and you can see the 2 spikes, and then a return of 4 sampling rounds back down to historic levels.
Is it true that benzene causes leukemia?
Benzene is actually a known carcinogen, and it's something that is regulated by EPA. And again, we do have a drinking water standard of 1 part per billion or 1 microgram per liter for benzene. Now here we look at the well RW6, where again we see the 1 spike, and then back down to historic levels.
Hey, Joe. Mayor Demers, Bergen County. You had a question that you wanted to ask?
Sure. I was just wondering, with the groundwater samples or in the pit or in the aft shaft, and then surface water samples, whether at the reservoir or downstream, has any modeling been done to show what a semi-volatile will do from the groundwater to the surface water to show that's indicative of it volatilizing, basically? Have you done any modeling to show?
Modeling we haven't done modeling, but we do know that 1,4-dioxane is something that doesn't really like to volatilize.
But it will, it's a semi-volatile.
Yeah, I mean, basically you can see the levels dropping, so there are mechanisms that are essentially addressing it. And here at well RW6A, again, we see the 1 spike that we mentioned, and then back down to historic level. This slide just presents the data on a figure, so you can actually see where the detects were. It's a little blurry. Is that it? And again, we can see the purple, which is coming through very well here. I know it's hard to see, but during the January sampling round, we can see the sort of levels we were getting here in the Peters mine pit area for both benzene in green and 1,4-dioxane in purple. Again, note the stream samples. The highest level we have is like 0.82 in the Park Brook. Martin King is actually off the map. It's way off. This is just the Peters mine pit area, and then you see the SR3 area down there. This is all near the Peters mine pit area. There's another figure which has things the whole site.
You shouldn't be finding this in the water.
Now this is the results for the deeper water in the Peters mine pit area. And one thing you'll note here is the highest levels are again in the air shaft, and then in the well immediately downgrading at the air shaft. And this figure basically shows all of the surface water sampling from the August 2015 sampling round. And you can see the highest off-site level is up PAB 04, which is actually collected at the mouth of Sally's Pond, which is, well upgradient of the Wanaque Reservoir. And at that point we had, it was non-detected in one sample and detected at a concentration of 0.44 in another. SW03, that point right there in the mine brook, it was non-detect. The recycling center would be up, way up over there, yeah, if you can. It's actually, the new one would be on the other side of the street from where he was pointing. Now, with this data, the next steps that we have planned for groundwater at the site, right now we have boreholes being drilled to install 3 additional bedrock monitoring wells. And this would be, excuse me? Well, right now we're just boring the hole, so we don't know the final depth of where the wells are going to actually be screened at this point in time. But we're installing these wells to further define the 1,4-dioxane, primarily the 1,4-dioxane contamination. Will be monitored for other contaminants also, but specifically for the 1,4-dioxane.
So while you're taking the next steps with emergent contaminants that you hadn't tested for before and that we hadn't seen before, are you still confident that you should be continuing the remedy that you had planned before with this question? Why are we gonna cover it up while there is still stuff we don't understand? Because this is change, I'm sorry, this is a game changer for me. I didn't like the old deal, but now you have emerging contaminants that we never even tested for. How do we know that there aren't other things that we hadn't tested for that are gonna come to bear, which is why the CAG had not, and the community, had not wanted it capped. We wanted it dug up. So maybe you should be reconsidering, because maybe that's not a good plan.
They can change the remedy
I mean, I'm
based
sorry,
on
something
new
just
information.
changed. So,
That's how-
something changed.
No, again-
So we have, so at least included in your next step should be, let's not do that next step until we really figure this out.
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is a whole bunch of unknowns. And you're just gonna cover up unknowns.
Again, we are collecting data and we'll, evaluate that data and, take
But let's
appropriate.
stop the other stuff for right now until we work that out.
I mean,
Because once you cover it up with the new recycling center, we're screwed, and it's done. So, I'm sorry, in those next steps should be slow up the new recycling center until we figure it out.
I mean, again, we will evaluate the data and then we take
Emerging
appropriate.
means there's a changing situation, so situation has changed.
It basically, emerging means it's a newer compound, which is, we don't have standards developed for it yet.
And Joe, I have a question too. Is there any way to quantify the benzene, the lead, the dioxane, and all these other chemicals, considering that this stuff has been in the ground for 50 years? It would have to be a very large amount of contaminants that are in there to keep allowing this stuff to be coming up.
Exactly.
For 50 years, it's been.
I know, yeah, and again, we will look at it, but, keep in mind, the levels that we're detecting at, in some cases here, fractions of a part per billion.
Right, but
So you really don't need a
but we're
huge
also-
amount of a contaminant to
But we had somebody that was,
contaminate groundwater at those levels.
if we had a child that was born in 1964 or 1965, by the time they're 70, they're going to probably be well over this. I mean, because it's a matter.
Yeah, I mean, again, nobody's drinking this water.
Hold on a second. Our people have drank from the springs, they've drank from the rivers, they drank from the brooks, they eat the food, they eat the fish, they play in the dirt, and, I've spoke this before, putting up a fence and not putting a required sign on there, and you telling me that the protected fence there is sufficient for human health, when you can actually go over to the Ringwood State Park, and you can get on the Yellow Dot Trail and walk all the way down directly into Peter's Mine Pit, because there's a big rock there with a yellow dot on it. That's not protective of human health. And our people, that's why there's so many people in here, because this stuff is not protective of human health. We're finding out something that was in the newspaper that said, okay, 100 days. You're showing that last year, almost a year ago, this was coming up, and it was being documented, and we weren't told about it. Correct?
Basically, we saw it in the pit, or in the air shaft, to correct myself, during the April sampling round, and only one sample. Again, it was tentatively identified in June in one sample in the shaft. It really wasn't until the August round, which we got in November, late November, that we actually saw the 1,4-dioxane in monitoring wells at the site, and that basically,
In June 2015, it was 150 UGL.
in one deep in the mine shaft. That's basically where it was found.
And
It wasn't found. We didn't identify it anywhere
Is there
else
any
in the mine shaft.
concern that with the minor earthquakes that we've had, is there any concern that the bottom of Peter's Mine, that we all know that live here and our families know that bedrock is fractured? Is there any consensus with the EPA that something geological has happened that's allowing this stuff to move?
Exactly.
I mean, that we don't believe is happening. This issue has come up before, and we actually have consulted in the past with USGS. We can consult again with them.
Could
And in the
you-
past,
could
they
you
didn't
write
think
that
there
down?
would be, there was any concern regarding that.
Thank you.
Can you ask the New Jersey Geologic Service to come to a CAG meeting, our next CAG meeting?
Just one other thing, I think maybe you can appreciate this a little bit. We were really focused in the last year, especially on the benzene, because we saw these two unusual spikes. So we were really narrowing on that, wondering what was going on, figuring out where we could put more wells, doing more sampling. The 1,4-dioxane, when we did see that, come up in November, December, we saw it and it was unusual. It's like, why is this showing up now? But the levels that we were seeing, while some of them are above the state standard, they were not something that we really were alarmed about. It was something like, okay, we're going to need to deal with trying to figure out why this is just showing up now. And we went back, we started looking at the literature. The detection limits for this compound were, 1,000 times what the state standard was, a decade ago. They've gradually come down, maybe they're about 100 parts per billion. 10 years ago, the methods have improved dramatically just in the last 5 years, so that now we can get down to the 0.07 parts per billion that we were talking about before. But again, when we looked at that data, we looked at it and said, well, who's getting exposed to this contamination? Does it present an independent threat at this point in time? No. The answer was no. Well, really focusing on
I actually want to say something about that. When that happened, you guys made that decision. You guys didn't contact me. You didn't contact any of the residents to ask them if they're going over there, if they're coming in contact with any of that stuff. That did not happen. And it's not that it didn't happen from August. And it's not that it didn't happen from the report from Cornerstone in November. This has been going on so far since 2014, right? It was detected?
No. The
2015?
first time it was detected was during the benzene was in the fall. The benzene was in the fall, but that was already presented to the CAG during the last CAG meeting.
The dioxane.
The dioxane wasn't detected until the April sampling around, which we didn't get the results to for about a month and a half later.
And is that because you never tested for it before?
The answer is it likely was not tested for because of the analytical methods that were used.
But don't you have a list of all of the...
But you have to understand that even if it's not on the list, the equipment can still identify other compounds, and other compounds can be reported as tentatively identified compounds. Basically, it's a library scan. It compares it against like 50 or 60,000 different chemicals when it gets to the output. And even if you look at the June sampling round, it was identified as a tentatively identified compound.
Given the nature of this whole thing, right? And given the nature of the fact that we know that all of this is coming from the paint sludge, and some of it made the Freon obviously coming from refrigerators and stuff from West Milford and Ringwood. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, seriously, that it can be allowed. I mean, listen, seriously, and I don't mean to get off, I really don't, because I'm sitting here asking my family members to hold off, but the reality of it is that we have had to live here in this stuff for 50 years, and the EPA's health part has not existed. It really hasn't. You guys are not making an effort. I mean, you maybe right now, but you're also sharing information with us that should have been shared with us a very long time ago. And without us having that knowledge, we can't even go to the experts. We can't go to the experts that may want to lend their time to us, or the ones that we have to try to scrounge money together to pay them. We don't have that. We don't have the funds that the town has to do their individual testing. They're a responsible party. Ford's a responsible party. We're not a responsible party, but we're not given that ability to do that. No one's splitting water samples with us to have tested at NYU or anywhere else. I mean, these are things that really need to be addressed, and the EPA needs to really stand up and do what you're here for. You're not here for Ford. You're here for the residents that are all sitting right there, and the environment, which we live in. That is great America. Sorry,
I understand.
It has to be in the context.
People live here, we don't have to live at this.
Exactly, and it needs to be in the context that our family that's sitting there can understand as well.
For many, many years, our environmental engineers and experts have said it was a mistake to bifurcate the groundwater cleanup from the, OU's Peters Mine, Cannon Mine, and the O'Connor disposal area, because you can't separate them because they're interconnected. Doesn't this just reinforce what our technical experts have given in writing and presented as expert testimony, that in fact can't really bifurcate the groundwater cleanup, that these are connected, and that a cap may not be the appropriate remedy for Peters Mine? Doesn't that at least raise some level of credibility to these environmental experts that have brought that in their expert testimony?
Okay, well, I mean, at this point in time, we don't believe that's necessarily the case here. I mean, right now, I don't have the data yet, but we did do some additional sampling as part of our pre-design investigation for that capping remedy, collecting data of the soils within the Peters Mine pit area, and it was sampled for 4,1,4-dioxane. And what's being reported to me verbally at this point is that it was not detected. So that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily an issue where that remedy is not protected. It looks like it's more of a groundwater remedy, groundwater issue here that we're dealing with.
You could potentially use a cap, but you may need to take out more source material under Peters Mine that's contributing to the groundwater contamination. You don't have a steady timeline for when you're finding it. The levels are so inconsistent that you can't give us any assurance that geologic conditions won't change over time. We're not good at forever. Mankind has never been good at forever. So 5 years, 10 years down, 20 years, 100 years, geologic time is nothing. And if you leave material here in the ground that we know is a source and don't address it adequately, that's only going to come back to force the site to be relisted for a third time. And, EPA tried capping. That was the first remedy they delisted it. It was capped, it was level, wasn't it, when they walked away?
No, we didn't cap it. No, that was basically, that indication was that it was capped when Ford stopped its disposal. They put a little bit of soil over it. We don't consider that, we didn't consider that at that time, that's not the remedy. We evaluated it, and based upon the data at that time, EPA, selected the remedy it did. New data came to light in 2004, and that prompted all the current actions here.
So it wasn't capped the first time?
No. That was not our remedy. No, it wasn't capped the first time. It was a removal of some of the paint sludge, and then it was basically groundwater monitoring services.
Why only some of it? I'm sorry. Now, with the dioxane, this is 2015, we're talking about not dioxane right now, but back at the CAG meeting, now 12213, right? We have requested dioxane, sampling we had requested prior to that. And at that meeting, we were told that the resident can request dioxane testing. So why did it not happen way back then?
No, again, two different compounds. The point is just two different compounds. The dioxin testing was offered, I believe, at that meeting was for the homes. The houses, which was conducted on some of the homes.
Yes, but we wanted it done at the sites. So it took this long to get rid of the dioxane.
Yes,
We wanted dioxane.
Yes, again,
After all this.
different compounds.
Yeah, but you understand what she's asking? She's saying the CAG also requested dioxin sampling.
Right, back in.
And that's why we did conduct dioxin sampling in the houses. That's correct. Where you would most likely be exposed.
I am talking about this site.
Dioxin overseas has been in the ground for 50 years, right? And they're still pulling dioxin out, and they burn it up in these big, gigantic furnaces. And I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I've asked you myself personally over and over and over to have soil sampling done for dioxin. And what came back was always that, well, it's very expensive to do, and we don't feel that there's a need to. But what about the communities, how they feel?
What's their chance of getting testing done for dioxin?
Additional testing for dioxin, above and beyond, that's something I guess we can discuss, but, we can consider, but again, the highest risk for dioxin would be in the homes where you're enclosed area most of the day, that was why the homes were offered.
I've been CAG member, as a matter of fact, this month, we are 10 years old.
10 years.
And I cannot tell anybody here about those vegans and all that stupid stuff. I would just like somebody to in English, you know, and I'm not a chemist, in which it is confusing when you're telling us you find, you know, this and you find that. And I would really wish somebody would remind them, try to break that down a little bit, you know.
Yeah, and that's why we, that's why we present those numbers. We present those numbers because they basically are, what they mean is it safe or is it not safe? And that's basically, to us, that's what it means. Basically, and that's what they're based upon. They're typically based upon risk.
Could we just have a simple, could you just provide, say, a very conservative but loose estimate of the amount of dollars expended on all of this research for 10 years? How much taxpayer dollar has it cost for 10 years of this part per trillion?
Actually, not too many taxpayer dollars, since Ford is paying for most of the work here.
And what part is the taxpayers paying for?
Very, very little, if any, at this point, because we basically, when we enter into these agreements to do the work, the agreement provides for us to bill Ford for our costs.
All right, so
Well, that's different. I'm talking about, when we're talking about taxpayers, we're talking about federal.
No, Joe's saying,
We have done testing groundwater at various seasons over the year. And there's a period and it varies over seasons.
I know about chemicals, that converted, when they spill, we go and look. And in the summertime, in heavy rain, mud and dirt purges, and then it makes the groundwater show chemicals and test high for chemicals. So that's what's happening, the earth is purging.
Okay, well, I mean, again, we tested at various times during the year. As you can see, some of the sampling events we just went through. We had March, April, June, August, December. We sampled at various times during the year. The comprehensive sampling round happened to take place in August of last year.
Very hot. And that's when it was high, right?
Well, that's when we first saw the 1,4-dioxane, but we also saw it again in December. So, regardless of what season you sampled in, it's there in the groundwater.
But it's in the dirt, it never goes away. It'll never go away.
If it's in the dirt?
If it's in the ground,
Actually, 1,4-dioxane happens to go into water very easily. That's one of the concerns.
That doesn't break down.
And benzene tends to go into water easily too.
Exactly.
Again, this is basically.
Wait, Doug, we'll get to the question.
Read this last line.
Yeah, I know. Basically the last slide, just our next steps. We're going to install those wells, do additional groundwater sampling. That'll be put into an addendum to the approved RI report. We would then revise or finalize or amend the risk assessments, groundwater risk assessments reports for the site. Develop a feasibility study in which we evaluate various cleanup alternatives for groundwater. We would then go and present a proposed plan for addressing groundwater at the site to the public. And then finally, a record of decision would be issued to document EPA's decision regarding site-related groundwater at the site. At this point, the record of decision is very unlikely that would happen this year because of the additional investigations that we need to do now because of the 1,4-dioxane. So we're probably looking at sometime next year.
Any members of the CAG have any questions?
Early on, you said that people didn't drink the groundwater, but how does it impact wildlife? The flora and the fauna, since we know that the residents live to some extent from things they hunt, things they grow. So even if they're not drinking groundwater, what is the groundwater doing to everything else that lives in that area?
Well, again, because the groundwater contamination here is, at depth, generally the fauna is not going to be exposed to it. And again, we're going to be doing a risk assessment and revising a risk assessment here, an ecological assessment, which will look at and incorporate this data. So as far as, concerns regarding the animals, again, it's at depth and there's really not that chance of exposure.
And what
Three-eyed frogs are okay.
And what is the current timeline for the proposed new recycling center?
Well, our remedy right now, we're still in the process of designing the capping of the O'Connor disposal area. And right now, it looks like it'll be 2017 before we would actually begin constructing anything in that area.
So is there a way to take a step back and not let anyone move forward with any of that until your way, you do a lot more? I looked up emergent. Emergent means in the process of coming into being or becoming prominent. So if we have something new that's becoming prominent, maybe we should not do that and not even think about that right now and just tell the borough to stop.
You know what, in support of that, I'm looking at your slides. Obviously, there's been a lot of due diligence done, a lot of analysis, a lot of good analysis being done. But there comes a point in time, this has been going on for several years now, right? There comes a point in time where it's called analysis paralysis.
Yes.
Where you're analyzing and sampling and doing this for years and years and no conclusions are being drawn, no action plans are being set. I agree with you, we need to kind of stop and draw some conclusions now. You see people getting sick.
Move the people out.
Struggling. It's not just Upper Ringwood, it's all of Ringwood, you know?
Yeah.
We have a very high
Exactly.
cancer rate. So, step back, can we rethink some of this? Stop the analysis and move forward with some conclusions.
I mean, understand that one of the reasons that we split the disposal areas from the groundwater was because we wanted to move forward. We wanted to implement a protective remedy here for those areas at least. If we kept it attached to the groundwater, we would still be discussing those areas rather than actually designing a remedy for those areas. So we did it to actually speed up the process and to provide for more protection, to help protect the residents from those areas, any potential exposure in those areas.
And nobody's talking about it. The community hasn't even been aware of it. We had data up there from April. It's March of 2016. So we've got to get in front of this.
Plus, I'm sorry, if the Berlin record hadn't exposed this about a week ago,
Right here tonight, this is what this meeting was called for. This meeting was, we've been trying to get this meeting organized since November of last year. We've been trying to coordinate the meeting. Again, this situation, from our perspective, doesn't present any sort of imminent risk to the community. I mean, if we had determined that it was, we would have been out here right away. But we wanted to share this data with the community as we've done historically. We've been trying to set up this CAG. And this CAG meeting,
With the Pac-Man.
the CAG meeting, we've tried, and Pat, when did you send out the?
I don't have email. I tell everybody that.
What I'll say is that when you did send the email out, and I got the email, I actually responded to you.
The only person from the CAG who responded.
I have a question. So, the Wanaque Reservoir, which feeds over 3 million or 4 million people every day, not just speaking about our family, that should be pretty evident because they're sitting here in this room, but you have the Wanaque Reservoir that feeds 3 point something or 4 point something million people. What does the EPA think that they would be able to do to prevent either benzene or lead or arsenic or dioxane or any of those other chemicals that we don't know that are or are not being tested for from reaching the Wanaque Reservoir? I mean, this was a question that when we were talking about this originally with the rod, and I got into the question with Walter Mugden, and it was about cap, and he said, well, it doesn't really matter whether it's a permeable cap or a non-permeable cap, remember? And I said, you're right, because it's about the groundwater. And unless you are going to take all this stuff that's left there and actually encase it in a tomb, how are you going to prevent it from leaving that site and heading to the Wanaque Reservoir and affecting 3 to 4 million people? You know, the town, and I don't know if I'm correct, I was looking at the town data and I'm asking this question. The town of Ringwood, 97% of the water, municipal, people's houses, 97% of it comes from municipal wells, is that right?
Correct.
All right, so only 3%, I don't know where the 3% is, but there is a well that's right down here, I believe, right? What's the closest well here?
Valley Road,
Valley Road?
by the middle school.
All right, so if we have, and I don't know if that's the well that actually did have that recording of the dioxane in it, I would probably assume, I don't know. The town did record I mean, I don't know it either, I'm not really, I'm just making it guess. Yeah, I don't know how to exactly say that correctly, but the point is that something really does need to be done, and, you know, I think that it would behoove all of us, meaning us, to keep pressure upon you, and you to keep pressure upon Ford to really do something about this. I mean, to sit here for a year, you guys had that information, regardless if it was a one-time spike or if it was a minuscule thing. It's not something that naturally occurs, so no one's going to sit there and say, well, it's coming from the mine tailings. You know, this is in the ground, it's been in there for 50 years, and it's still coming out, and it's still affecting our people. You know, I have 2 burials to do, or 2 memorials on Friday. Vivian's sister is sitting right here with us today. You know, it's not just affecting us, and it's going to affect a lot more people. You know, you can't, if you have anything, and I know it's a federal mandate, right, for tap water to be tested for dioxane. If the tap water has dioxane in it, no matter what level it is, specifically if you know that you're in charge of the Superfund site, bells and whistles should go on. And that's not just my personal opinion, you know? You guys are supposed to tell us, this is our CAG, right? And you guys are supposed to come here to share this information with us. And you know what, and honestly, if you couldn't have got a hold of Bob, or if you couldn't have got a hold of Minnie, you guys still should have went ahead and had one of these meetings. Because somebody would have been driving by and they would have been, hold on a minute, and they would have came in here, probably like tonight. You know, something needs to be done, and it should not be no Band-Aid. You know, we can't keep getting told over and over and over when we have people that are living inside the Superfund site. They live in it. You know, we have people that are not here no more. They can't fight for themselves anymore. That's our job, and you guys are supposed to be the ones that are fighting for us, including you back there. I mean, honestly, you know,
I have a question. I live on Van Dump Lane. There's water comes down from the mountains, through their yard, through my yard, right on down to the lower road. Has anybody ever checked that? And I'll tell you why. Ringwood really doesn't care about us people up there.
Exactly.
All they want to do is get us out so they can have a dump or something up there.
Well, they can take me out.
Because you know something, we're going over this again and again and again and again, and we're not getting no help from Ringwood. And now this big thing is Ford paying Ringwood or whatever. What about us, who's still living there? Why don't they move up here in our area and drink our water and make the gardens and
Bring your
take the
kids up.
showers? Or bring their kids up and let them play in our parks. They're not gonna do that. They don't even show their face up there unless it's a 911 call, or they wanna come up there and harass somebody. You call for help and they can't help you. Ringwood can't help nobody up on Van Dyke Lane or anywhere up there.
Would there be a difference if the term, instead of dioxane, if we were saying there was sarin being put on the Native Americans? Would anybody be concerned about that?
No.
Because that's what this dioxide, all of these poisons have been doing to our people for quite a number of years. We're being gassed. We're being gassed, and then we're having a bureaucratic stumbling block to make like nothing's happening. Let's get another test. You know, 150 people dead. You know how many that is? That's a pile of people. If they were coming out of a shower, or we were saying sarin, everybody in this room would be up in arms. So I'm having a hard time understanding how essentially you could what appears to be bureaucratic malfeasance that leads to murder, and it goes on and on and on, and nobody addresses it. You didn't even address when I said, what remedy of health and safety is being provided for the residents? You'll get back to me? You told me that last year. Remember, I gave out cards 2 years before that. You're going to get back to me then.
You know,
I have one thing to say.
So I'm just
that-
saying, I think it's either solution time, you know, let's leave the Norton Newark science off and let's get to a solution and let's get to a healthy community.
I think
And I'd still like to know what percentage of taxpayer money is being
We
used.
have nothing.
in support of what the chief is saying and what Chief Mann is saying, I think in my involvement over the last 4 years as a healthcare provider, there's been really no significant health data obtained for this community that's been open and real for the people that live there. We're in a process through the NYU coming in and helping and getting health concern surveys done for the first time that this community is going to own. But thanks to Vivian and Janet Saylor and, you know, if you were just to track as an individual concerned person in the community, went back through records and looked at, you know, the 100-year-old, the 90-year-old, the 98-year-old, the 70-year-old, the 82-year-old, and you look at a graph that shows that these people are dying at 50 and 40 and 30. And the point is that there isn't, when you go back to statistics and you look at like surveys within the state, they say, well, you know, this is such a small community of how many hundred people that it isn't statistically significant, okay? So the commentary about smoking, commentary about drug abuse, the commentary about genetics, that's everybody, okay? But this community has very, very privately documented a change that is coming from somewhere. And you're talking about not immediate danger to 2 or 3-year-old that's out there, but the damage has already been done. Okay, the damage is done. And what are we going to be talking about 20 years from now when the damage continues?
Half this room won't be here, Karen.
So I'm not saying this is a major criticism. I mean, this is a big problem, and it's a big problem for people to figure out. But one thing is very clear, it is a big problem.
You know, if I may, I don't need to talk out of turn because I respect the process of the public out. Portion. If this was Franklin Lakes, we wouldn't be here right now.
Exactly.
Done deal.
Exactly.
You know that, everybody in this room knows that. What I want to know is the highest elected official in this room, I'm assuming is Mr. Cardinal? Is that correct? I want to know what, you are the highest elected official in this room. You represent us. The EPA, pardon me, the EPA, I don't trust the EPA. September 14th of 2001, Christy Whitman stood in Lower Manhattan and said the air quality was okay to breathe. You know how many people have died since then? So I don't have any trust for the EPA. What is your opinion? What are you going to do for us?
Well, the first thing I did is to try to educate myself what the nature of the problem is. If this was Franklin Lakes, I wouldn't be here, because that's not in the 39th district. Are you suggesting that we transfer these mines to Franklin Lakes?
No, we don't have time to get around it. I appreciate your bad, we don't have time. You know, you should have educated yourself already. What do you mean you're educating yourself? This has been going on for how long?
50 years.
And you've been elected how long? How long have you been in your chair?
I have been in my chair, but the 39th district has not included Ringwood until recently. And I am here because of the problem, and because I want to become familiar with the problem.
Thank you.
I do not want to have my constituents living in conditions that are unhealthy, if there is any way to remedy that. Now, I have learned a few things here, and I have been listening to some of the questions. And some of the questions are very good, and some of the questions were questions that were on my mind. Some of the questions are, you know, I like to take a look at things from various directions. We're talking about looking at what's there. what's the effect of what's there? Some of you have been talking about the effect of what's there, but I asked the question just now, has that been documented? Well, somebody else tells me that it is, she made a statement. It is in the process of being documented that this health risk exists. Now, from my perspective, if the health risk exists, I don't care whether it comes from benzene or from some other kind of chemical. The health risk needs to be eliminated.
Correct.
If we document that there is a health risk, we need to eliminate it.
There is.
I'm not an engineer. I'm not a chemical engineer. I don't do these experiments, I don't do these examinations. I have to rely, and any elected official has to rely, on these experts. And one of the reasons I wanted to be here particularly tonight is because I heard that there were going to be experts from the EPA. I have to tell you, you told me you don't really value the EPA's opinion, but I think they're an independent agency of the federal government. They don't get paid more or less because of what they find. They are objective, from my perspective, objective analysts. And if we want to know how to resolve the problem so that we eliminate that health risk, we have to listen to what they tell us so that we know what to do. Because we can go, we run around like chickens with their head cut off and not solve problems. And too much of government does that. I'd like to see a real solution to this problem so that my constituents, and I assume that you're one of them, do not have to live in these kinds of conditions. And I will tell you, there are representatives of other elected officials here right now. Some of them are Republicans and some of them are Democrats. I don't think whether they're Republican or Democrat, they want to have their constituents living in these kinds of conditions. I believe that all of the elected officials who have taken the time to either come or send representatives are concerned about this problem. And you got a lot of them who came here. You got 2 U.S. senators have sent representatives, you have a congressman sent a representative, you have an assemblyman here. I see a number of public officials that I recognize. There's a couple of freeholders here, one from Bergen County, one. There are a lot of public officials, but you know what? I don't have a magic wand. I really don't. I need to listen to these experts and try to figure out for myself what these experts are telling us to do. What I hear from this particular expert is we don't have a clear path yet. I do not know whether total excavation of this site or capping of this site, if either one or neither one will solve this problem.
What was the initial recommendation from the EPA?
I need to find out. And tonight is, a first-hand finding out. And I hope, I hope I little bantering with you. I try to take things a little light once.
And I appreciate your input, but these people, when I say these people, I'm one of these people, but these people are literally dying. And what is the year? How many in years? I mean, another decade? What are we talking as far as, can we put a time limit on it? When does somebody say, you know what, enough is enough?
Yesterday.
We're doing this now, whatever it takes, whether it's a love canal, remediation, or whatever. When does it come to that point?
Can I just say, here's our
I
problem.
haven't got the answer to that.
Here's our problem, Senator.
Because I am not that expert. But perhaps we can ask the expert, when do you think the testing that you're doing will be sufficient for conclusions to be drawn that will point the way to a real remedy?
But the EPA's already made a decision. That's our problem.
Right.
The EPA's already got a decision.
I heard.
So I haven't heard
Whoa,
anybody say
but-
they're pulling back from
Madam,
that decision.
madam, I've been in an awful lot of public hearings. I understand the emotion that affects all of the people in this room. I really do. But if we don't give this gentleman an opportunity to answer the questions that are asked. If we continually interrupt, we're not gonna learn very much. We've gotta give him an opportunity. If you have another question, I'd be very happy after he answers my question. But I thought that that question is something that should be on the minds of everybody in this room.
But I think the terminology is a little off, because what you're saying is, we need to get more facts to make a decision, but.
No, I
because
asked
I've
him
been-
when.
because
I
there's
asked
already-
him when.
I know, but what I'm trying to explain to you, because you are new to this, and we're not so new to this, there already has been a decision. The EPA has made a decision. They've already determined their remedy. So nobody's told us yet that they're pulling back from that, which means right now, we're hearing new information, but the remedy continues unless they tell us otherwise. They have already made a decision. It's done. So
From
are
my
we gonna
experience
change
as a
our
public official,
decision?
Madam, from my experience as a public official, the question that you're asking cannot be answered by this gentleman. Because I don't believe he has the authority to tell you what you want to hear. You want to hear that it's been changed. What I heard him say, and I've been sitting here like a bum on a log, I heard him say it isn't for another 2 years that they're actually going to start to actually do something physical. I think that's your failing. Until then, they are still examining.
Senator, with all due respect, with all due respect, and this goes back to his question to you, and, well, not his question, he made a statement about his distrust of the EPA, and that distrust of the EPA is embedded in the faces. And the reason why is that in 1994, it was delisted. We were told that it was safe to go play, to go eat, to go drink, and meanwhile, unbeknownst to us, we were still dying, and we believed in what was being said. And it was for Mr. Barry standing over there behind the pole that actually fought. And he went out there, and he went to the very sites that you guys had listed, and found, with Bob Spiegel, I'm sure, and found the paint sludge exactly where you said it was. And that failure upon this community and the 3.4 million people down the road exists. You know, Senator, we keep hearing the same thing over, and over. And the only thing that this CAG actually seemingly represents, and I don't mean this to the people that are sitting here, is that all we do is get to come in here and be what you stated. Be emotional. It's the only thing we can do, because we are not experts. The only thing we're experts in is burying our families, and that is a fact. It's a fact that not Joe Gowers can deny, the President of the United States, anybody in this town. It has to be fixed. There's an immediate threat to our family. There has been so since 50 years ago.
Now, I agree with you that it has to be fixed.
It does, sir.
I agree with you that it has to be fixed.
But I understand the remedy.
When, and so do I.
No, I don't want to know when. I want to know when our people are going to be afforded the ability to actually live their lives like what's stated for human rights, because they've been violated, and there's no doubt about it. 50 years.
And what budget is when we vote?
Just clarify something for the elected officials so that they understand. Because I think you're talking at each other, but I don't think that some of the elected officials understand why the community is bringing up these issues. Because some of you like new to these meetings and do not understand that EPA has decided that they are going to bifurcate the groundwater decision and make that somewhere down the road. But our experts and our engineers have said that the areas where the toxic waste is, that they are taking these samples from and they are finding these contaminants are a source of that groundwater contamination. Now, EPA has already determined that they're going to cover these areas that have known sources of contamination with some type of liner or cap of some type, and that is their remedy. And then somewhere down the road, they will determine what to do about the groundwater. Those things are interconnected. And if you look at the sites themselves, and actually I would ask that any elected official who's here tonight come for a tour with the community so you can see firsthand. You'll understand that when you see the chemicals coming out of these seeps that they're talking about across the homes, where their kids are going to get on the bus to go to school, and that these areas that they're gonna cover, that are the source of this contamination, are connected. They absolutely are connected. So they determined that they're already gonna cover these up, that's their cleanup. They're gonna cover them, and they're gonna monitor them, and that's it. That can't be done, and then come back down the road to determine that, oh, well, they're a source of the groundwater contamination, because they're connected. And that's what I think they don't understand. And
Everything that you have told me, I have read in the newspaper. Okay? I knew that before I came in this room. I have asked this gentleman a question, because I believe the fact that they are still doing testing indicates, at least to me, maybe it doesn't indicate to anybody else, that they still have not made a final decision.
We have not made a final decision regarding the groundwater contamination at the site. We are still evaluating that, we're still collecting data, and we hope to have enough data collected by the end of this year to move
There has been a
forward.
record of decisions.
There's been a decision made about Peter's mine,
That's correct.
Can I ask my original question again? I know too much has happened. Can you give me and all of the people in this room an estimated time when you will have finished enough testing that you will be satisfied to make a recommendation to whoever gets to make that final decision as to whether that already made decision needs to be reopened, or whether you're going to go forward with that, whether there is an alternate remedy that can be proposed, and who we have to talk to get a better, if there are more than one way to skin the cat. Who can we talk to? Who's going to make the decision as to which way this cat gets skinned?
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
I have a specific response to.
Answer the damn question.
With regards to the existing remedy, at this point in time, the data we collected doesn't seem to indicate that that needs to be changed. With regards to the groundwater, we're still investigating, and we believe that we will have enough data by the end of this year to basically move forward with the groundwater. In the meantime, the existing remedy that's been selected for the 3 disposal areas is going to be continued to be designed.
Well, can you now, that's good, we're getting somewhere. Can you tell me why that existing remedy, in your experience, with your expertise, resolves the problem of, except for the groundwater? Does that allow my constituents to live a normal life with respect to the problems that are coming from that might not be seen?
The existing remedy, once we implement that, dig up some of the contamination, cap that area, will cut off any sort of exposure to that material. Whatever's left over, there's no exposure. And, you know, we see no evidence of it drifting. There's going to be groundwater monitoring conducted as part of that remedy to ensure that it remains protective. And if it doesn't remain protective, EPA would then require an action to make it protected again.
What would you do? Tear up the recycling center?
I mean, again, it depends upon the situation, but right now, we don't believe that's going to be the case.
But the seeps will still seep. Even with the cap, the seeps will still seep.
The seeps are basically a product of the groundwater contamination, and we are still collecting data and to determine what needs to be done with the groundwater data.
In the capping that you do, in the capping that you do you do any vertical barriers?
Yeah, the capping that we're designing, there aren't any vertical barriers. But it could be, if there was a, large groundwater problem associated with that waste, that could be it.
Joe, would you just touch upon the waste that has been removed and what was left over, what was found, what drove the risk that led us to decide on that? So we had the paint sludge that was removed. I don't think it's.
Yeah, I mean, while these investigations have been going on, I mean, there has been paint sludge found at the site. We're now up around 60,000 tons of paint sludge that has been found and removed from the site.
Can you correct your statement before one of the newspapers writes it? Because you haven't removed that many tons of actual paint sludge.
It's paint sludge and associated soils.
Right.
That
which probably makes it the most of it.
Well, it depends upon the area. A lot of it was almost pure paint sludge. So, I mean, basically, 60,000, you're right, it's 60,000 tons of paint sludge and associated contaminated soil.
And before you do a count, I heard you say that additional material is going to be excavated.
That's
Can
correct.
you elaborate on that?
Sure. In the one area, the Peters Mine Pit area, excavation of waste material, what's left in that area, down to the water table would be conducted as part of the remedy. The area would then be backfilled and capped.
Does anybody address
Is that all going to be paid for by the monies that you're getting from Ford?
It is our intention that that would be paid for by Ford. We're currently entering or negotiating an enforcement agreement with Ford for that remedy.
Okay, so you're going to continue to monitor groundwater as you proceed with the capping of Peters Mine and Mine, recycling the O'Connor. But, there is so much contamination there, it's obvious, like in the fractures and the fissures, and it just comes out at a certain time, you just don't know when. So, how are you going to clean the groundwater when everything is capped, if that's what you're continuing to monitor, the groundwater? I don't understand. Like, if the groundwater is continuing to have elevated levels of contamination, then how are you going to clean it at that point? What are you going to do then? That's the
Basically, there are various technologies to treat groundwater contamination, and that's something that can be implemented at the site. Basically, once we would look at alternatives and select what.
Can I ask, how is the health,
understands the fact that the CAG and the community do not want the O'Connor landfill capped. The EPA had come with a remedy which said that they were going to excavate all of the materials, the toxic sludge from the O'Connor landfill, which is, I'm not going to say it's easy to do, but it's easier than going into the Peters Mine. And the borough then came with a remedy of covering, capping, no removal, and then building this crazy recycling center, which is, we don't need.
Carbon blacktop.
The EPA, I kept asking if they had authority to override that request by the borough, and they insisted they did, but in the end they caved. And actually, they met secretly with the borough, with the board, and came up with this whole convoluted idea of building a recycling center. It was brilliant because nothing is what's going on underneath, and it's just not gonna last.
you should guess why there's distrust.
And the majority of public comment, all the majority of public comment wanted it fully cleaned out, so that's why.
Ma'am, you have to give us an opportunity to respond to that, because I don't think it's entirely accurate. We did not meet secretly with the borough.
Well, you didn't,
Yeah,
we didn't know about it.
Yes.
September 11th.
We didn't know about it. We've been sitting here for 10 years.
You have to understand some of the constraints that we're operating under as well.
What are they?
There are a lot of things. First of all, when you're getting back to the contamination at the site, you need to assess what the contamination is, figure how people are currently exposed to it, will be exposed to what exists in the future, and what those risks represent. How are they exposed? How toxic is the material? How often are they exposed? What are the risks? If there is a risk above certain levels, we are then authorized to take action. So as much as we might want to go in and dig all this waste out and remove it,
But
we don't
you said
have
that
the
you
authority to do
would.
that.
That is,
Yeah,
Wilton actually said that we had a meeting. He had said that that was the
For
plan.
O'Connor, for O'Connor.
O'Connor,
Yes.
that's
what we're talking about
He had
right
said
now.
that was the plan, and they were going to return it to its natural state,
Now-
so that the residents could have that natural
Open
state
space.
returned to them. And then, literally on a dime, the borough came up with this plan. It came out at a CAG meeting. We had never heard a thing about it before. And all of a sudden, the EPA said, well, now they had to entertain that because it was a viable alternative as far as they were concerned. And like that, there was a new recycling center proposed when we have a perfectly fine recycling center. And so, yeah, and save Ford a ton of money and save the town a lot of money.
$1
And
million.
this is why,
So,
you know, for people that haven't been through the whole process, there's a history that leads, there's a history that makes us all.
I'll take over here a little bit.
Can you just let him?
Respond to
Yeah.
you saying there wasn't a meeting on September 14, 2014. There was a meeting with the EPA and the borough, and the CAG members and the residents were not absent.
They came into our office and they presented their potential, this was their land use, this was a new land use, and that's.
No, it was not
Joe,
new.
can I respond?
It was out there a year before.
I'm sorry, maybe I
they
didn't
brought it
speak
to you.
loudly enough, but I said there was no secret meeting.
Well,
We
all right.
definitely,
It was
we
a
definitely
secret to
don't.
us.
It was a secret to
It was a
us.
secret.
It was behind closed doors.
So we're up to approximately 60,000 tons over the years.
All right, how come I have here at 38 Shantuck Lane, let's see, including dirt, you moved 220 tons from that yard. And then, again, you moved 60 to 80 tons by the Borough Garage. The total for 38 was 300 tons. So I don't know how you're coming up with these numbers.
That includes all of those SR areas. There's SR areas 1 through 16. So there's 16 sludge removal areas. That includes the SR3 area where the seep is.
Yes, and at the SR1, I lost it, okay?
Okay, so these are all of the paint sludge areas that have been found over the years outside of the Peters Mine Pit area, the Catamine Pit area, and the O'Connor disposal area. Actually, one of them is actually in the Peters Mine Pit area also. So we took out, Ford's contractor took out approximately 60,000 tons of oil.
From
All-
SR1,
That's
SR2.
correct. All those areas.
Yeah, that has to be done.
Yes, no, all those areas that they.
We're gonna open to ask questions. I would just like to ask one question. I've asked it repeatedly. What is being done to address the health hazards and safety of the community?
So this has been laid out to Chief
By
question
anybody.
and actually perhaps clarifies where the real issue is. You mentioned that you estimate all the exposures, you calculate all the pathways for creating hazard, absorption, what people are eating, what their exposure is, and you get a certain risk. And if I remember, that risk comes in sort of just at the borderline for what requires remediation.
That's correct.
And then we've had health surveys where the Department of Health has surveyed from the census records, cancer rates, and the problem is it's a very small community. They look at specific, small numbers of diseases, and maybe there's an effect and maybe there isn't, and maybe due to cigarette smoking, and they can weigh the report and say there's nothing going on. In the meantime, when Vivian and Maxine and myself went carefully through the church records, we found that the death rate per year doubled starting in 1970.
Exactly.
And that the result of 40 years of that was a loss of life expectancy for this community from 70 to 50. We didn't break it into little categories. It's not by cancer, it's not by heart disease, it's what's the total impact. And the problem is that every single scientific study or scientific model is not capturing that. So you have a huge discrepancy between the scientific modeling methods, which are predicting one result, and the actual mortality for this community. And nobody has addressed that discrepancy in a way that makes sense. And until that discrepancy is addressed, your expert opinion is not trustworthy because it's not predicting the result that's coming out.
And you're
So
talking to
something's
Dr. Saylor.
missing
Essentially,
in
it'd
the
be blood on your hands.
or some, so either there is a source, or a pathway, whether it's because of the dioxane that was never tested for, whether it got into the ground and into people's systems, or if there's something, but there is a huge discrepancy between the EPA's models by which you're basing what's recommended and the actual mortality for this community, which doubled from 10 per decade to 20 per decade, starting in 1970. And has remained at that high level.
Yeah,
Doctor? May I ask you a quick question? The study that you referred to, that you put together with your...
I put it together. I live on Cannon Mine Road. We sat down on Cannon Mine Road in a kitchen with the health records from the Good Shepherd Church, which simply recorded the age of death and the number of deaths, and then we looked at it year by year by year.
Would you be able to share that with the senator and I?
Before you leave, I think I have a copy outside. I'm sending somebody to go get it so we can physically show you.
I have to say that since I basically did it in this unit's draft, it's only 2005, but I can start working on making it up to 2016.
And in addition, Vivian has documented every death in this community. So if you're willing to go by the community's records of their family members, then, or just talk to Chief and talk to the number of deaths that have been in the last month.
And if I can just add to that, one thing to make sure that when you see this, you take into account, this does not include any other church, it does not include any funeral home. Only church that this record comes from is from the church next door here, which is our church. So you can take this number and probably easily multiply it by 3 or 4.
So if I'm
I have one comment to make too about statistics. In my interest in the last 4 years have been trying to find statistics on this community. And I can tell you, they do not exist. The census committees that have come up to this community did not even go to homes. It was just done hypothetically about, okay, we have this many people, there's this many people, there's this many people. None of it is valid information. You cannot find any statistically valid information on the census in this community, and forget the healthcare. There's nothing.
And just to add to what she's saying, for our guests that are here, we have tribal members and family members that live there. Some want to sell their house. Some want to buy a house. You cannot get a mortgage.
Nope. Amen.
The house in there, we're having issues with getting insurance to cover those houses. We've had people come out from loan companies to come out and do an inspection on the land, and when they get there and they find out where it is, they refuse to even get out of their vehicles or subject any of their employees to that. And that in itself brings me back to the problem that I have is that you cannot sit here and continually tell us that by mere fence being put up, that is protective of human health. You have to, by law, right, put a 2-foot by 3-foot sign that says U.S. EPA Superfund site, danger, keep out. Because if you go in there and you climb over the fence, or you go around to Ringwood State Park and walk through there, you end up what? Being able to access that. And the animals, right? The flora and fauna and all that stuff doesn't know no fence, it doesn't know any borders, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the signs, we have had signs up. We just saw one today, a warning sign. And unfortunately, sometimes they do get stolen and ripped down. And we put new signs up. I mean, we actually know one where a college a cop actually called me because they found it in the dorm room. So it does get stolen.
What dorm room? Where? Yeah, what dorm room?
It wasn't a college.
We organize another meeting, get them together and have consideration, and can we also bring additional support that the senator and others in the board, as well as the town and the CAG.
Okay, to clarify, the decision wasn't made in that meeting. In that meeting, we had a new land use. I mean, basically, we don't set land use at the site. That's local government sets the land use at the site. I need to explain that they presented to us a new land use, their future land use for that property, and we have to take that into consideration when we select our remedies. Whatever remedy we select, we consider to be protective of human health and the environment. Whether it was dug up, whether it was capped, there were some benefits we thought to digging up the material, but they're placing the recycling center on top of the cap essentially address some of those concerns about maintenance of a cap, because there will be something there. But regardless, we are required to take into account the future land use of that property. And that's what kind of prompted the change from the selected remedy to our contingency remedy.
Just hold on, one follow-up. That was the past decision. Now let's talk about the future. How can that change? Can you explain the process and who has the authority to make the decision?
I mean, again, you would need new data that would warrant there being a change, and that would have to be made, ultimately it would be our division director. It's our decision totally. We have to make the decision, but we have to take into account the future intended land use of the property when we make that decision. Regardless of what decision we make, it has to be protective of human health and environment. I don't sign the document that makes that decision. That would be our division director.
Walter Mugden is the division director. He's the guy that is the person who gets the raised, this has to go to in order for the decision to change to be made. That don't count? MU.
And all the other elected officials. My name is Alan Bragg. This is my third or fourth meeting here. I also attended 18 to 20 meetings for the Crossroads Sheraton site, which was the original Ford site where this paint sludge came from. There's a site there on site that has a plume of toxic material that is migrating. And it's being capped and is recommended by the New Jersey DEP. Not to get off the subject here, but the two are related. Senator Cardinale, I have an important point I'd like to listen to. In 1783, there was a magnitude 5.3 earthquake in this area. This is a seismic fault zone. One of the faults, the Ramapo Fault, goes right through the Ford site in Wawa, and there's a site here. Just in January this past year, there was a 2.1 magnitude earthquake. It's been brought up, and Mr. Spiegel brought up a point which I'm very concerned about. If the bedrock in this area is fractured due to a seismic activity, I don't know if it's gneiss or if it's basalt or whatever it is, but if it's fractured, and the material toxins that are in those mine sites that are capped could leak into aquifers that would leach into the reservoir, both here and in Mawa. It serves 4 wells of aquifers for all of Mawa. So I'm talking about train pollution and pipeline pollution. This would be 1,000 times worse. So, when the gentleman from the EPA talked about evaluating future issues, what is the future issue with regard to seismic contamination of either the 1,4-dioxane or any other arsenic, lead, etc.? Because we don't know when the next big earthquake, 5 or higher, is going to happen. It could be next year, could be 10 years, could be 50 years. And to leave this contamination in place is a ticking time bomb waiting to happen in 2 weeks. I want to give you a little demonstration. Here is a gallon of Poland spring water. Clear and pure. I'm drinking it. Here is a sample, a facsimile sample of 1,4-dioxane. I put 1 small drop in there.
Shake it up.
You got contamination through. Who wants to drink it now? That's what we're facing.
My name is Marcia, I'm from your under. First, if you tap it, you're not stopping the underground water first. So it's going through the trees, it's seeping out, whatever. So, Senator, it's going underground. And by going underground through the trees, the roots suck the water. It's going to go from here to God knows where, probably York or wherever. Then also, over here on Martyr King, have you did any testing on the paint sludge that was supposedly all removed right next to the stream that leads to the Wanaque Reservoir?
Yes, I mean, the paint sludge that was, there was paint sludge removed, you were talking about what we call the SR16 area.
Over by...
Yeah, there was paint sludge removed there, and there was sampling of that conducted. And sampling conducted to verify.
Okay, now, the underground water to the town. If you find that it's contaminated and the town has to remove the recycle center, per se, or the town has to tear it up, who's gonna be responsible? Is the town gonna have to pay millions of dollars to remove all that stuff? Or is it Ford or the EPA? Because the millions of dollars is gonna be Ringwood tax dollars, not mine, Cups, all Ring, everybody's. And who's gonna be responsible for the town to pay all this stuff? The town? Were we gonna go bankruptcy because you're gonna have to remove everything for the, so I want something to think about. I'm not saying, but.
Word is responsible.
Right. But what happens if they appeal it down the road? You know what I mean? It's just a lot of money that Ringwood should think about. Before you back there.
Because the cleanup's done, they're not off the hook.
This is what I'm saying, because the water's gonna go, there's a stream down behind, there's a stream down behind where the recycle center is going. Are you guys gonna put a filtration system in there to monitor anything coming from the recycle from that capping pressure to control what's going out to the stream down to Newark, Wanaque, and all other places throughout? Or is the town gonna be responsible?
There will be a monitoring system there. There will be groundwater wells there to monitor to make sure that remedy remains protected. And if the remedy is determined not to remain protected anymore, then action needs to be taken to remedy
But
that
who's gonna be
situation.
responsible, the town or Ford?
It would be the
That's something
PRB.
for
I mean,
to think about. I mean, you know, you're taking something on and it's gonna be a lot of headaches more, because you guys have been going through it for years with us. Not saying it's not everybody's fault, but, you know, it's something to look into more that's gonna be attaching to our kids that play at EDU at school with the streams. All this water, the groundwater, the pressure from that cap pushes it. So I don't care what it's gonna push it. And eventually, it might not reach there today, but tomorrow it's gonna reach there. You know, it's just something to really think about.
Can we just clarify the point of Ford being responsible in perpetuity, since my recollection is Borough Ringwood is responsible as well?
Well, as I clarified,
Well,
I don't know what.
but I didn't hear that come out of your mouth, Mr. Hack, all the parties. You said Ford. It would be both, because the borough has been complicit as well.
So everybody
It's not just Ford. Correct.
And anybody that takes the dirt from the recycle for their gardens in many years that just moved here, well, that dirt was contaminated too, so you don't know what's in your yards. There's many lupus cases around Cupsall Lake and stuff too. So there is something that could be taken from here and dispersed all over. So think about that. If you have an issue, make sure you bring it to the town, because it could have been something from here that's over there, or the water coming down through Sally's field that you eat the fish out of by the park. or you go down to the reservoir and go fishing, or you play in that little spring behind the school where we used to go on an educational trip, okay? It's all through there. The groundwater, once you put a cap on, it pushes out all over, everywhere. So eventually it's gonna reach there. May not today, but 10 years from now, you'll have issues and not know where they come from, but originally they're gonna come from that contamination.
Well, with a cap, don't you have to maintain a cap forever?
Basically, yes, you would need to maintain the cap to make sure, it remains protected.
Don't they all
If they're
fail?
settling, then they got.
They all fail.
That's the problem, you know?
But don't they all
Eventually.
They all fail over time, they require maintenance.
They require maintenance,
Or they
and
fail.
that's what
What's the effect of
And
those
the,
trucks
and the
on
waste
the cap?
waste that's in these mines, is it also possible it's similar in profile to some of the waste that's been removed from the sludge removal areas in the past?
I mean, at this point, what we explain what we're seeing in the mines. We're seeing the highest levels of benzene, the 1,4-dioxane, which now, I mean, we have to wait to see the data we have collected, but we're being told it looks like the 1,4-dioxane was not detected in the soil samples from the Peters Mine area that were recently collected.
But they could, but it's similar to some of the sludge that has been removed is potentially acting as a source in Peters Mine to the groundwater.
We, basically from the Peters Mine, we don't know what the source is essentially in the mine shaft itself. We don't know. It could be related to the forest waste, I mean, it could be. It could be something that was poured down there. I mean,
Well,
that's a
some
possibility.
of the waste that was taken away from some of these areas was so toxic it couldn't even be disposed of in the United States, right? It had to go to Canada because no place would take it.
It had high levels of volatiles which couldn't be land disposed.
So it couldn't even be, so we're talking about capping still these areas. They may have waste that they wouldn't even take out of the worst toxic waste landfill in the United States.
But that's not, again, that's not supported by the data we collected. I mean, we collected, we've done borings in these areas, we've done testing in these areas, we've collected paint sludge samples from these areas.
Well, something either changed, or either there was a seismic activity or something changed for you to find this, and you're saying that your sample methodology.
That's what we
But that's a
believe, yes.
theory. That's a theory. That's not based on, science. You're saying the science is new, the sampling techniques are new, and that's a guess. But it could have been caused also, like an equal guess, could have been change in hydrology, seismic activity that happened here a few years ago. It could have been something else that caused that to be released beyond just your new sampling methodology. Isn't that true?
I mean, that's a very unlikely situation or possibility here. The most likely scenario here is that we just simply did not detect it because our detection methods were not capable that were being used of detecting the 1,4-dioxane potential.
So I'd like to get back to the health effects, please. That's okay.
Speak louder.
I'd like to get back to the health effects and to follow up on Janet's and Kathleen's comments about some things. First of all, when you guys hear, when the communities are talking about health effects, you have to know that that's not the purview of the EPA. That is not their purview, okay? If you notice, it's the New Jersey Department of Public Health, the New Jersey Department of Health, that sent out these documents back in 2010 and before that. So they're the ones who did the census, they're the ones who never asked the people, they're the ones who took hospital records and came up with these outcomes, okay? One of the outcomes that they came up with is that my research is involved with prenatal early life exposure, pregnancy. And one of the things that the issues of preterm early deliveries, low birth weight babies, and sudden infant death syndrome. And what they concluded, because they only had 150 or 156 people, is that even though the incidence here doubled in terms of low birth weight babies and sudden infant death syndrome, it wasn't statistically significant, and that's what Kathleen was getting at. Now, all of the health surveys, all of the health documents that have been done from here, from what I understand from working with the community for over 2 years now, is that they don't see any of these records. And I'm not addressing this to you because I know the EPA and what you guys do. They don't see these records. They don't know, okay? So we have, in collaboration with Chief and some of the leaders, came to us at NYU, and I am a doctor and I'm a professor of environmental medicine at NYU Medical School, for those of you who may not know, and came to us and said, our people don't know. We have Janet's data that was put together in a way that we just looked at the data, it's open, there's no scientific background for this, we just know something's happening. She brought this data to us and I said, you need to have something happen. We need to go home by home by home, and we need to ask you with the surveys that we have out now, and we need to get about 200, it's a plea, it's an infomercial, we need anyone who hasn't done this survey to do it, because the community put it together, we adjusted it to a scientific, so that what's coming out of this is going to be science. And we have NYU Medical School biostatistician, bioinformaticists, and epidemiologists, all with no bias, and nothing from the town and nothing from Ford. And we're going to tell you, you're going to have that scientific data that you want, and you're going to have it from us in publications and in peer review literature. But the community is going to own this, and they're going to see it for the first time.
Can I just add to what she's saying? If you're a resident of Ringwood, then you should also be taking the survey, just so you're aware.
This is your survey. We have it.
All right.
I just need...
I appreciate the...
Well, it's more than just appreciate, I'm sorry. These people really need to stand up for the health implications that they have. We have, I think, 50 surveys now from the community, and some of the numbers that we're seeing in this small population are astounding in terms of the diseases that they have. Okay?
Well,
it's not statistically based yet.
I'm not dismissing what you're saying. You've said, that you want people that live in the community.
And outside, we need controls, unlike what the Department of Health has done. We need our controls.
Right.
So I just want to put that out to you. Please, I'll leave my card with anybody who wants it. Please fill out these. Yes, and we have a Facebook page. What's the name of the Facebook page? It's the...
I believe it's Ramapo NYU...
It's a consortium, right? It's...
Alliance.
And Ramapo Turtle Clan NYU Health Action Alliance. You can just put in Ramapo Turtle Clan and it starts to come up. Ramapo Turtle Clan NYU.
So that's the other thing that I wanted to say is that since EPA, it's not their purview to work with health effects. It is ATSDR's purview, okay? And for them to have been here 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, because I've only been involved for 2.5 years, that's not enough. These people are suffering with health issues, and they don't know where to go, and they don't know where to turn to, and some don't have health insurance. And the ATSDR, when I call them up, what? What are you talking about? What? Who? Okay, so you guys, I have to leave, and you'll be happy. But you guys really need to do this. I'll give you our cards, and you need to take charge of your own lives, okay? Because nobody's watching out for you.
And I am also authorized to actually do the survey with you guys as well. So I'd like to ask Pat for our next meeting. We would also like to have the EJ people come. And we're also going to do we're going to have Professor Edelstein is going to come and do a presentation. Yes, he's going to do a presentation on the environmental.
No, I ate the whole thing. That's my turn.
No.
One person.
I've been around 8 years. I know
I actually work with,
Judy, excuse me, Judy, can you see, could you get back to us and see if April 4th we'd be able to utilize the auditorium?
April 4th, what day is that?
April 5th?
Starting at 6:30?
6:30.
Okay. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, well, we're going to go over the action items now from, we're just setting a meeting. The action items were about getting the sampling. Right, and we're also going to request that Walter Bucket. You just said you were in the meeting. Also, And then also Mike Ellison.
These guys will give you the numbers.
Hang on one second. We have to find out all right, hang on. Let's give everybody a chance to talk for a second. You guys just give Ken say respect.
Hi, I'm Ken Patron again.
Give him the mic.
All I want to say is that, neither New Jersey EPA nor the US EPA are trying to hide anything from anybody out there. I know that everybody's very unhappy about the capping remedies. Unfortunately, both agencies have to work within certain legal constraints. We don't have full authority to do just whatever we want. As long as our remedy is protective of human health and the environment, we have to go with that remedy. And our role, and Ford's role forever, will be to make sure that that remedy remains protected. Whether it's capping or digging it up, they have to make sure it remains protective for infinity. So we're not walking away. So I understand that. All I'm saying is that we're not hiding anything from you. We learned about this emerging contaminant very recently.
It's not on the website.
Okay, we learned about this very recently. Can I finish, please?
No, you can't. You're saying that.
All right, well, you know what? We're gonna be talking more about this at the next meeting anyway.
You were supposed to hear, I'm supposed to hear how the public is supposed to get information. And I heard tonight, going down through here, everything's been taken off the EPA website and the Superfund, and nothing's been put back up. Nothing.
I will have to check that just to see. I picked up, I got some documents the other day, but that was a couple of days ago, so I don't know if anything was
The
taken down.
EPA plan requires by law, for this information to be on their website. I'm a lawyer, I know how to research. There's nothing there, nothing. And these new reports, I asked her specifically for these well reports, why weren't they on the website? And I didn't get an answer.
Well, that's a valid question. I had to tell this young lady I would take her next.
Can you give me a date when the website will be restored?
You want to respond to that?
Yesterday, I pulled down the August 2015. It was all on the administrative record. Everything is there. There was 140 something documents there. The December 2015 groundwater surface sampling, that was in there.
April's there.
April's there, August was there.
And when was that posted?
It's all there.
We posted over the last few days, we got down.
The last few days.
There you go.
So I think you need to get the link, the town has it, okay?
Vivian, it wasn't there.
Well, that's what she just said. They just put it on a few days ago.
It wasn't there.
When did you look for it?
A few days ago. Right when all the
Okay, I had
newspapers
promised they could ask.
My name is Tony Granado, and I'm representing the Sierra Club of New Jersey. And I just want to respond to the DP and the EPA tonight, and let you all know that what is in their peer review is not to pave and waive this site, and it's not to cap the site. And that's clearly what all the CAG members are saying, and it's clearly what the community is saying. And we believe from the beginning that we should have done this, and that we need to go back and instead of removing the toxic chemicals, You just simply place the asphalt cap on top of hazardous materials. And we know because of according to scientific studies across the country, these types of controls fail, like we've been saying. So we know the cap is going to fail. And we want you to take action to do something more effective for the community to prevent another toxic nightmare that they've already been living for 40 years.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a comment. I have a comment, Jim. If we had been federally recognized, would we have been able to sit at the table with you and Ford and Ringwood to make the decisions on whether or not be a part of that process, that we could our voices really could have been heard sitting at that table?
Your voices are heard. I mean, your comments were provided. We did take into consideration all of your input. As far as being at some sort of secret table.
I'm not talking about secret. I'm talking about the fact that I don't know what's the word for well, it does matter. It does matter if we were federally.
About the Revenue Review Board? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I am. Yes.
If you were federally recognized, you could have been, I believe, a party to that.
Right, we would have had, the tribe would have had a say in what ended up becoming the ROD.
But you did have a say in what became the ROD. You did provide comments, and all those comments were taken into consideration.
They were taken into consideration, you never ended up where you was happy.
The only
Talk
thing
about
was-
human life, not your paycheck, not Ringwood's taxes.
The only thing
Talk
that was
about
taken
human
into
life.
consideration was the borough's plan to build a recycling center. That's what
And
you
saved
waited
$4
your whole
billion
decision.
in doing it.
The other thing that being
All
federally
of that 8
recognized
years
would
of
do.
comments didn't mean anything in the final decision.
They were, again, all taken into consideration. They were all addressed. They were all in the responsive summary.
Obviously not as much as
And-
the plan. Obviously not as much as the land use plan for.
Again, whatever remedy we implement has to be protective of human health and the environment.
That should be first, not a
Containment,
recycling center. but-
containment is one of the options that we look at in every site. It has to be
You've got to be
evaluated.
embarrassed by
Back to
that
your
decision.
boss, tell them, let's revamp this whole capping event, or you wanna take it back to them and say, hey, can we talk about this a little bit more? Or is it-
We will definitely inform our boss of the concerns expressed.
Yeah, again, you have to remember these two things are happening in parallel. It's gonna be some time before construction actually starts
Oh,
on
we
that
know it's
cap.
gonna be 2025 before we get definite answer, we get that, because
Right.
it's a lengthy process. But what we wanna know is,
Yeah, but we can move on parallel tracks with both the design of the capping remedy and with the further investigation.
And my comment to that is that when this man standing right here to my left asked over and over and over, while you're doing this one thing here, couldn't you get started on the cleanup part over there? And you was always told no. So now we're talking that we can run a parallel thing. I agree with the fact that you can continue on the path that you were going on as far as preparing to continue on with the record of decision, but I think that this other part needs to actually play a larger role in the fact that that may not take place, the record of decision.
I think the point was that as we move forward with a further investigation and we get closer to figuring out the scope of the problem and how we should address it through alternatives, whether it needs to be addressed or not, via the groundwater remedy, we'll be moving along with the design of the cap. We'll have an answer on the groundwater remedy before we ever start to construct that cap.
When we had levels of dioxane that came up in water testing a year ago, this is something that should have started then. And now, a year later, this is a complete year later, and this is the first time that we're hearing about this.
Again, we were.
And that's I'm not going to cut you off, but then again, I do mean to cut you off. It's a failure. It's an utter failure to the people who are sitting here, and the ones who are not here anymore.
We do to remedy that. We'd like to talk to you guys about putting the data up on the website as soon as we get validated data. Does that work with the notification, email notification?
Yes, I mean, Pat has my email, I need my phone numbers there.
So let's figure out exactly how we do that, and we'll do it.
Excuse me, no offense to you, but I think the head honcho needs to be here next time. I mean, no disrespect to these gentlemen here, but I think the head of the decision making needs to be here.
Let me give you a little bit of feed. The woman who is in charge of the environmental justice for the state of New Jersey, her name is Wanaque Outlaw. And everybody hears that, Wanaque Outlaw, because I have been asking for her to come here. Personally, I've had these guys go back for 3 years, and she has refused to come. It's her job. We are a environmental justice community, right? The federal government says so, right? It's in your EJ assessment. It's in the final draft or the final of the, right. So we're sitting here and we're still waiting.
So maybe the senator could place a call to
The hope is that the political powers that be take this information that they've got tonight, both from the EPA and from all of us, take it back and force somebody to do something. Because we're running out of time. You know, and it does. I heard that one of our elders sat back there and said genocide. And I gotta tell you, that is right here on the tip of my tongue.
Could we have someone from the federal health level here be a member of the CAG? I mean, I'm impressed with the science, I've said it, but nobody yet has even said, you know what, call social services if you're sick.
The ATSDR.
What's the remedy? What's the physical remedy for these ailments?
Chief Perry, the ATSDR came here, went to our church. While we were sitting there, we made reference to a CAG. They said, okay, right now, guess what? We just formed a CAG. You know how many times we met? That one time. They never came back to work with the community, to come up with the actual data for the survey that they had did. For 2 years they hid, and then they finally, eventually, after they said they were going to send it to me last April, they sent it to me in last August, after they had to go through one more review. That's where the ATSDR and the New Jersey Department of Health stands. And Passaic County actually needs to send their health people here. 2 years ago, I seen a woman at Ringwood College for a fracking event, and she says, oh, hi, I'm such and such from the health department of Passaic County. And I looked right at her and said, well, why are you not at any of these meetings? You know, our issues are the technical aspect of what you guys are bringing here to us. And I know, because you've taken a lot of abuse, you know, some of it's been well-deserved, I might add, and some of it not. You know, I believe in what you're doing, and I said this one time, and Pat said, you know, that's not fair. When I said that, you know, I imagine when you guys get in your cars and you start driving home and you're by yourselves, that you actually think about all these people that are sitting in this room and all the lives lost. And I understand that your hands can only go so far. Walter made that very clear to us. You know, but the fact remains is that it's still something that has to be done. And the United States government cannot allow us to continue to die, period. 39 miles from New York City. The only thing that's going to save us is ourselves.
That's my question. I have one for you. I'm sorry, but
Talk into the microphone.
I don't remember seeing you too much in 10 years.
Yeah, no, I've been at a couple of the meetings, more important meetings. Walter Mugden probably was at those meetings.
More important? Okay, and then my next question, you're off the hook here, okay?
I'm sorry.
I want that guy from Ford that's hiding over here in the corner. The barrels, the black barrels, are they testing, are they what you're putting in the ground to test the water?
No, that's the water and the soils that are coming out and drilling the water.
All right, so that's what you will be testing, what you're holding in those black barrels?
Yeah, well, for disposal, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, I wanted to know. Thank you.
Can I just get one fact, can I get one more fact out before that, and then I'm done talking for the night? Bob Spiegel had brought to my attention one CAG meeting over here at our church, just to give everybody an idea of how much Ford paint sludge was being dumped.
You know what?
In 1978, there was congressional hearings on waste management.
Reading about it.
In the list of all the chemicals that were disposed of in the state of New Jersey, only one of them had an actual company name to it, and it was the Ford paint sludge. They were disposing, and you guys can do the math for yourselves, 16 million pounds of paint sludge quarterly for 4 years at a minimum. Where is that paint sludge? A lot of it's over here, and it's going to be there forever. So there needs to be something to save our people's lives, and I'm not sure what that is, but something actually does need to be done.
if anybody wants to get a copy of that, I got it from the National Archives in Washington DC. It was the U.S. Oversight hearings on hazardous waste, and I think it took place in 1979. It's what led to the Superfund being created, and they asked the top, I think, 35 chemical companies, what kind of toxic waste did you make and where'd you dump it? And they sent back the surveys, and they had hearings as a result of it, and they released this report that had what the companies reported as self-reported themselves, what they made, and lo and behold, and they also had hearings. So I have the hearings, I have the report, I have it digitally if anyone's interested, and you can look for yourself, and actually Ford has its own classification of waste, hazardous waste, which is the only one that has its own classification as green sludge. It's pretty amazing. What was the number again? Quarterly?
16 million pounds per quarter. So that's 4 times a year, right? Times 4 years. And how many tons did you say was removed?
Here, about 60,000 tons of it.
So I gotta tell you that even if it was once, 1 quarter, would that be equal to that? 4 quarters? I mean, that's a lot of paint sludge. That's a lot of benzene. That's a lot of dioxane. It's in the ground and it's going to keep coming up. And I mean, I don't know that you guys have the technology to actually stop this. The one thing for sure is that when it hits that Wanaque Reservoir, forget about us. Hits that Wanaque Reservoir, the people that are in, let's see, Newark, Kearney, name some of the other towns, right? There's like 12 of them. Patterson, Passaic, all these people get their water from this reservoir. You need to be really thinking about what you're going to do, because if all fails, 4 million people, Flint, Michigan is not even going to exist.
Hey, just gas, join us.
I'm looking at the box that Vivian has here with the ashes from her sister. And with all the, I've been at a few of the meetings over the last few years, and I feel like we're in a crime scene. First, the Ford dumping the sludge, and then the EPA, and I've heard the health department before, with all their data and more data and more data, and no remedy, and allowing that place, the stuff to be capped. It's a crime. And in Flint, they got rid of the regional head of the EPA. Why can't we get rid of these people who just keep on feeding us the data and more data and more data about all the chemicals? People here know what's going on. It's a crime scene, and there are criminals involved in maintaining the status quo here and allowing this stuff to stay in the ground. I have to say, I'm sorry, I let you, but there's a story with this box, all right? When they found the rubbery sludge, they found it like maybe in the month of July, and we found out like 3 or 4 months later, again, like this situation, she had a stroke during that period, that time period, when they dug this stuff up, and we weren't aware of it. Yeah, down by O'Connor, we're gonna put the new recycling center, that's where the deadliest stuff is. But, and I'm curious as to what happened, but then I found out 3 or 4 months later, that's when they found the stuff that they couldn't take nowhere in the United States. They send it to Canada, that's how bad it is.
So that's something that I would like for the senator here and the others to know too, is that where O'Connor is, that was where the most toxic paint sludge was found, and when it was taken out to, I think, Michigan, yes, they took it to Michigan to be processed. And once it was processed, they got a hold of these guys and they said, you need to stop digging now, you cannot send this to us anymore, because after being processed, it was so toxic that it could not be buried in the United States. And it went to Canada. Again, thanks to Jan Barry, we know that it went to the Chippewa Reservation up there, I think carried by Clean Harbors, and dumped on them. And during his investigation up there, he found that they had the same illnesses and sicknesses as we do right here. this still has to be some left in there because it was halted. So now you want to take the most toxic chemical that's there, that cannot be buried in the United States after being processed, and you want to leave it there. About 4 million people's drinking water, never mind the rest of our people who still live there.
That contamination actually came out of the area, what we call the SR3 area, and it was actually confirmed to be clean by post-excavation sampling. So we did remove all that material. It wasn't left there.
Wait a minute, hold it.
It's just north. It's just north of the O'Connor
I remember
disposal
they
area, the
did
SR3
Trenton
area.
and they had to stop when they found this stuff.
But I mean, the SR3 area was
I
removed.
watched.
What's the difference in composition between that and the other things?
Basically, it had more volatiles. It was wetter, essentially. That was really what it was. The volatiles had evaporated over the years, so it had a higher volatile content.
This guy must have arm lag by now.
I just wanted to, first one, a question, a quick comment. It seems that the decision to cast material was predicated on the decision to build a recycling center. And that seems to be a local decision here in Ringwood. So if the EPA looked at both removal and capping into that decision, based on Ringwood's decision to build a recycling center, why is it not possible for us as residents to have our elected officials not build a recycling center and allow the EPA to do the remediation that they think is the primary and best solution to the problem? Because it seems like instead of trying to push this up the chain, get higher taxes involved, we should really solve it here. It sounds like we're having our local people contribute to this.
Because they cannot give back forward the $5.1 million they got because they spent it.
Right. And
You gotta vote them out.
in regard to Ford, what I want
It'll
to
never
say
happen.
is, with Ford being responsible.
Happened once,
to some extent.
never happen again.
Forever. In 2009,
In this
Chrysler
town.
and GM went bankrupt and went through an orchestrated bankruptcy by the federal government. As much as we like to think of Ford as being here forever, they might not be. And there's nothing to ensure that 2 years from now, Ford doesn't go bankrupt, change their name like GM did to New GM, or whatever they're calling themselves, and somehow the federal government lets them off the hook. I mean, it's not to say that it'll necessarily happen, but you can't guarantee that stuff forever. What you can guarantee forever is that if the stuff is not here because we don't have a recycling center, it's not going to be here forever.
That's what they lied and said, they was going bankrupt, that's why the people said that.
I just want to touch on what he just said. When GM went bankrupt, there's actually is money that is set aside into a certain account for any Superfund sites that there are. The people who take that over, by the way, who knows what they do with that money while they're doing a cleanup, and typically what ends up happening is they run out of funding, and then the EPA probably goes in there, spends taxpayer dollars to clean it up because they have no one to go back to.
One last comment. Once they find out for sure this is gonna hit Wanaque Reservoir, not just us, our house is worthless, all these thousands and $1 million a house in the town of Ringwood are gonna be worth zero. Right now, our houses are zero. We can't get insurance, we can't get this, we can't get that, all due to that. So just think of all the taxes you're paying now, and then your house is gonna become worthless. Because once it hits the reservoir, forget it. The insurances are gonna drop you like they dropped us.
I just wanted to address that. I think you really should not be speculating as much as you are, because we don't want to get people nervous about this.
We can't get it because of the
We don't want people to
contamination.
think that the Wanaque Reservoir is now.
I said if it does, if. But as I know for a fact, there was paint sludge along the river right here going to the reservoir. So it probably is, but that's why I asked Joe for the money. But if it does touch in 10 years from now, the house is gonna be
But
worthless.
we will be going down and collecting additional stream samples to figure out what's in the water.
I understand, but I want them to be aware of our concerns because there's thousands of people here.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no, you can. I'm not blaming the EPA because the EPA just but that's all. Just be aware of your
I have to
properties.
apologize, but we're gonna have to kind of bring this meeting to a close. Actually, my son had a car accident, and I gotta go back, drive down there, and I almost didn't make it here tonight. So as much as I know we have another meeting in a year, we're gonna have another meeting coming up next month, and I'd ask you guys to all attend, but unfortunately, if you want to stay here and talk, that's fine, or you want to continue the meeting, that's fine too.
So the
but
next meeting is April what?
It was not on the town's website.
Well, that's not definite.
No, that's assuming we can get these
April
spaces.
5th, we want to have a CAG, regardless if we have to have it at the church.
Yeah, we're gonna have we'll have a CAG meeting. If we can't have it here, we'll have it in a larger location. Yes.
Where will that be
One
published?
question. There's been a consideration about the
Fifth council meeting.
With the
What about the
now you
following?
got all that kind of truck, we talking about truck traffic.
What about the following?
Has there been any studies to look at what the trucks are gonna have on them?
Well, the cap is gonna have to be designed so it can withstand anything. I mean, basically, it'll be packed, it'll be packed appropriately. There's also going to be, there's going to be an acid.
Everybody that signed in, where's, anybody that didn't sign in, please sign in sheet. And I want to thank everybody who came tonight. If anybody has any questions or comments, please, EPA's here, they'll more than welcome. No, I didn't sign it. I want to close the meeting to a close. I want to thank everyone in favor.